the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
You're doing good morning to you, and how are you doing? 25th of September, it's Wednesday. 5 days left to exchange your 1,000 bob notes. This is what is counting down to. In 5 days' time, you may be left with a worthless piece of paper. Welcome to the Situation Room. It's 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. Everybody's in the room this morning. Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko, and C.T. Muga. Ndu, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you today?
I am fine, thank you.
Good.
That's all?
Yes.
You're
I'm
not
happy
gonna ask
that
me
you're...
anything else?
How was your day yesterday, Eric?
My day was very good.
Or is that something you want to tell us?
No. No, not in particular. My day was very good. How was yours?
It was good, thank you.
Any 1,000 bob notes left in your wallet?
Under my mattress. I need to get this done. I really need to get this done.
I know somebody who runs a forex bureau.
Okay.
You can play them. I can bring them to you. You can give them the 1,000 bob note. They give you the dollars.
Yeah.
And you may be better. You can actually just take the dollars and not give them anything. We saw it happen the other day. C.T. Muga. Good morning.
Good morning. That story appeared and then disappeared, didn't it?
Yep.
The 150,000 US dollars?
Yep.
Ah, yes. Okay.
That was it.
Well, my morning is good.
Any notes?
One of the things that I have seen, given the hours we come to work, even that very early hour, traffic has begun increasing on the road. Usually, there's hardly any traffic on the road at around 4 a.m. Today, there was traffic.
Might be some big movements happening.
No, end of the month. This is not something complicated.
It's end month.
People been paid already.
25th.
Yeah, yes.
That means they were paid on the 20th.
Yeah, people get paid early.
I see.
Not us.
It depends on where you work. There are people who get paid the following month for the previous month. Yes. Yes, like your August pay comes the middle of September.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes, there are people whose salaries almost meet. One
Hello, I'm here.
If you work in the county system, if you believe what we see in the papers, you can wait 3 months before you see any pay.
Before you see anything.
Any pay, any whatsoever.
Unfortunate for them. Jerry, good morning.
Good morning.
Had a good day?
I
Well
did.
this morning.
I am.
So let's take a look at what's happened since the last time we were here. The following took place between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m.
I was expecting some music.
Some
Some 24 music. So I'm looking at the Standard. The headlines, Cohen Kin failed to lock Wairimo out. Although I don't know if that was their intention. This is with regards to her obtaining leave to attend the funeral of her late husband. Says here, Sarah Wairimo, the widow of the Dutch tycoon Top Cohen, prepares to lay flowers on his grave. She attended his funeral yesterday at the Jewish cemetery in Nairobi, flanked by her lawyer, prison warders, and family friends. And there's a picture of her by the graveside as the funeral proceedings go on.
So it's saying the ceremony was stormed by hundreds of angry and curious onlookers who later stormed the car that whisked her back to prison.
It's a shame, really, because she's been tried by media. She's getting a lot of attention. The case, of course, has gripped the nation. We have it in the papers every day. So people are going to form opinions, sadly, not understanding exactly what happened. Well, nobody knows the truth as yet until she's had a fair trial. We're not going to know what happened. But of course, she's been painted very negatively by the media, almost guilty until she proves herself innocent, which is impossible. It's impossible to do if you're assumed guilty. That's why it works the other way around. You're innocent until proved guilty.
Let's hope the DCI actually unravels this case.
I don't think she's guilty,
properly,
personally.
Let's see what the DCI does. We have very many
We're
cases.
still entitled to an opinion.
Yeah, we have very many
DCI does
cases
its
where
job.
the DCI takes somebody to court and then that person is acquitted. We have very many cases where investigations are declared shoddy by the courts.
We also have very many cases where people are set up for such things. So
Yes, exactly, and even those as well. So
especially where large inheritances are involved.
But I begin to question. I mean, this man is the public's made to believe this man was a billionaire.
He was.
What?
And
Well,
then-
yes. What did these billions consist of?
they will reduce that to millions.
What did he do as a profession? Because we've had
He
some
ran
insight.
golf tourism.
And
Yes. How did
and
this
rumors.
amount to billions? What is it that this person did on a daily basis that ensured that his net worth would come to billions?
I think his money was working for him. He wasn't working for his money by this stage, so he'd made probably good investments. Although
What were these investments? I mean, people
Well,
who are
they're not
wealthy
going to
are
go
known
into
by
that.
what they have. Because
no,
the
not
reason why I'm
completely.
questioning is
He
this.
ran a golf touring agency, you say?
Yeah, golf tourism brought a lot of. I think he brought quite a number of tourists into the country on these different kinds of excursions over time, and he's been here for the odd 20, 25
And he
years.
was among the biggest suppliers of golfing kits, golfing equipment, golf balls, golf.
People who manufacture golfing equipment could be billionaires. If you supply golfing equipment to golfers in this country, what I'm saying is this.
In the region.
Even make it the continent. There's a point that I'm making here. I'm saying there are very many aspects of this story that are not clear. So even when people keep poking holes and declaring the widow to be guilty, they are not really acting in good faith. We don't have all the information in this case. There's a lot we don't even know about this person. We do not know what it is that brought about their problems. You know, people are deciding domestic issues that appear to have ended up in someone dying. We don't know. And domestic issues you never really know, do you? Do you really know what happens between
Hardly.
two people? You don't. What you see in public, that's just it. It's what you see.
in public.
It's not the whole story.
I think the details are going to play out in the very near future for us to maybe understand a little bit more of what happened. If that's the case, we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, the lady, the star, has the headline, I know the killers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know that one changes the
Who,
dynamics.
I
of
told
the-
you.
Who
We're
knows
gonna
the
see.
killers? The Star
widow.
knows the killers?
The widow. The
Ah,
In the very
The
near
star just
future.
reporting. Yes.
Okay.
But there's something that is in fact, if you look at it, morning, it's gripped us. A 70-year-old former Treasury official's daughter and wife killed in South B Estate.
They were found hanging in the home.
Those people didn't hang themselves. Anyway,
Any note left behind? Anything?
well, that's what the DCI is trying to piece out. I am not going to be accused of trying a case in the media. I am simply going to state what is obvious and leave it at that, and wait for results to come in.
Well, something that's not in the papers right now because it happened this morning, 3 a.m. this morning, the Busia County offices actually are on fire. I think that all efforts are being made to contain the area, but it's interesting to note also that the specific offices, or rather the specific departments within the county offices that are on fire are the revenue and accounting offices. And records offices within the county offices. So that is what is currently happening. Started at 3 a.m. and right now there are fire rescue squad on site trying to contain that. So
You've just got to love Kenyans. I mean, I won't speculate as to what my immediate suspicions are, but you said this is where all the accounts and so on.
records,
we have.
accounts.
So we
yes.
haven't digitized these things yet?
No,
No,
we have
not
not.
yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were under some sort of investigation or there was an audit query lurking, but we'll wait and hear.
Remember there was a time back when the Secretary General of Kenya National Union of Teachers was apparently sacked, removed. You know, this saga still goes on. The courts had their say. the banks had their say. The banks actually declined to have new signatories. But now, a new twist to it. The Kenya National of Union Teachers chairman, a gentleman by the name of Omuchei, has been ordered to come to court because they and the labor code that deals with these matters have been found to be in contempt of court. These matters are never really at an end when you see them first published in the papers. What the papers tell you is just what's happening at that point. In time. But then we as Kenyans, with our due diligence, we rush to conclude that information. That's not even tertiary information. It's just preliminary information, and you've run with it and come to a conclusion. This Osion issue is far from being over.
Far from being over.
Yes.
That is the case.
Now, this is a straightforward labor issue. Now, how much more relationship issue? Where the intrigues are never really known to the public.
Right.
Not really.
Where you lived within the boundaries of,
Yes,
of your
yes,
home
yes.
and
No,
nobody
nobody
was
really,
with
really
you.
knew what was happening.
Oh, good to see. Speaking of things that will develop, the owner of the school still walks free despite death of 8 and injury of 60 learners. A day after the tragedy that snuffed out the lives of 8 pupils and injured more than 60 when a classroom structure at Precious Talent Top School in Nairobi collapsed. No arrests have been made. The school's owner, Mr. Moses Wainaina, and his wife, Freesia Wainaina, who serves as the school administrator, was still walking free, and it is not clear what charges would be preferred against them, if any. So we're looking at a situation where, okay, we're still kind of dealing with the horror of it all and not actually taking steps to do something about this and actually have somebody be brought to book. And, you know, like we said yesterday, we cannot let this go. We cannot be in a situation where we don't continually speak about it until something is actually done. I do think, however, that today, as the day progresses, we're going to actually see some more action with some of the, would I say, promises or demands that were made by the Nairobi governor yesterday in terms of what he intends to do when he arrives. I think he's already back in the country now, having cut short his trip to the US, and wants to see that some people actually answer for this. So there'll be more details through the day, I'm sure.
If we're looking at charges that could be brought against him, it's probably a gross negligence manslaughter, along with other charges of failing to have the property inspected as it should be, and so on. But the biggest charge would be gross negligence manslaughter. Remember, there was no intention, so it's not considered murder.
It's not considered murder.
Wow.
Sadly. Looking at the Standard again, something we were discussing yesterday, Ruto scores early win in race to shape IEBC. And we were discussing the notion of whether politicians should be involved or not. And clearly there's a hand, whether or not politicians are directly involved. They're still puppeteering one way or another. And this article purports that it's Ruto supporters, the MPs that are allied with the deputy president. They've pushed for the bill, they've supported it, and then the article also makes a clear divide that Raila's MPs, Raila allied MPs, did not support it. And then it goes further to suggest that central MPs were divided on this. I don't know whether they were divided by virtue of the fact that they were allied to Ruto or not.
Tanga Kieleweke, probably.
And I don't see how this particular bill would be beneficial or would give Ruto an added advantage over anybody else. But we'll wait and see. Maybe there's some intrigues we haven't read about. Maybe
Clearly,
it's an instrument for him to manipulate.
So yeah, exactly. It clearly shows like they think that they'll have a hand,
an upper hand
in reconstitution of IEBC. Let's see how it unfolds.
Uhuru Kenyatta was in New York attending the Climate Change Summit 2019. And he now says that the country is playing its role in mitigating the effects of global warming and urges world leaders to respond fast to climate change, something we're going to be looking at today. But interestingly, President Kenyatta has urged world leaders to adopt climate change adaptations if they are to secure future generations and expand economic opportunities. He was speaking on the sidelines of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly and echoed the sentiments of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who said the fight against climate change is a race we are losing, but one we can win.
He's actually due to address the United Nations General Assembly today between 3:15 and 4:20 p.m.
Kenyan time?
Kenyan time.
Yes.
this afternoon. And Monica Juma, the Foreign Affairs CS, says the speech will focus on environment, peace and security, climate change, and sustainable development.
Our president clearly didn't listen to what the UN Secretary General gave us a directive. People were given 3 minutes, and he said, please focus on practical ways of solving the problem, not nice speeches.
This is true. And even before the summit, he actually said, as you come, and all of you are going to speak, as you come with tangible solutions that we can have. Don't come with the flowers and lovely speeches, rainbows and bunnies to tell us, oh, what a terrible situation it is. No, we are past that point now. We want solutions of how we're going to make this thing work.
Let's see what the president says this afternoon. No, that's going to be that. Well, maybe he's going to come up with solutions and say, as Kenya, this is what we are going to do. We are going to.
I'm hoping it's something that we're already doing.
Are you suggesting that we are going to try and export our Agenda 4?
Yeah, probably. Our Big Four is actually going there.
We would want to think that it's something that we're already doing, because
we are banning the use of motor vehicles in Kenya to reduce gas emissions. We're going back to horse-drawn carriages and such kind of things.
Bicycles.
Well, it's interesting because the world is actually asking that we go to pre-industrialization state in terms of the warming of the earth. And we're looking at that was a status quo before, because now when you mention horse-drawn carriages, at that point when all of this was actually being used and done is when we were at good levels in terms of the degrees
below
warm.
How many were we on this planet?
Exactly.
Furthermore, I think it's a little bit unfair on the industrialized nations to impose this as other countries are coming up and they've had their fair share of polluting the world and so on.
They had their unfair share. Yes, because these damages we are speaking of is not caused by us.
No, it isn't.
Although you do have countries like China which fight back. They won't keep up with things like the Kyoto Treaty and so on.
No, they won't. They wouldn't bother with it.
They wouldn't bother with that. But
Trump has also said the same thing. Forget all these things that you guys are talking about.
Well, there are sort of theories that climate change is a conspiracy. There are those theories. I'm not saying that's the case. And you have some significant people who won't admit to climate change. When I say significant, authorities in the field who say, well, I'm not saying anything about it because that would go against the grain of popular belief at the moment and what's held popular. But they do argue that this is cyclic and this was bound to happen whether or not human intervention came in or not. You had the ice age and that melted, so there was global warming at some point previously. I don't know enough about this to go into detail, but there are theories that it's a conspiracy, climate change.
Coming back to Kenya, the brewer owners are protesting delay in trial. So Keroche Breweries Limited owners Tabitha and her husband have accused the DPP of delaying their 14 million tax fraud case by withholding evidence. Mrs. Karanja and her husband Joseph, through their lawyer Orengo, are protesting the delay in supplying the documents to kickstart their trial. So they're basically saying our trial hasn't started because we are not even being supplied with the evidence that we need to start dealing or responding to the case. And this is what the lawyers, through their lawyer.
And then we've been talking about referendum to change aspects or amend aspects of the Constitution, yet we have experts telling us there's no need to. Don't change law, experts say. This is in the Standard, and that's Abdikadir Mohammed and Yash Palgai. They've asked that it's better for us to fully implement the Constitution. There's really no need to change it. Of course, they were architects of the current Constitution.
Is an amendment a change?
It is.
And so you're saying that they're saying we shouldn't amend?
We shouldn't make any amendments, so no referendum to change anything. What we need to do is fully implement the current Constitution. So
I belong to that school of thought, of course.
The gaps we're seeing apparently in any governance or the changes we feel that must be made shouldn't be achieved by changing the Constitution. They feel that by keeping the Constitution as is and making sure all aspects of it are implemented, so for instance Article 6 and integrity, let's say, he says that we would meet the current needs for the country, and he claims, or they claim, a claim sounds quite...
claim is good.
They suggest...
Claim.
They suggest, they are experts, but...
they're suggesting the claim that...
any efforts to amend the Constitution are politically motivated, and it's for people who are looking to 2022 politics that would be interested. He says we should never play with a document as important as the Constitution just for the short term. Although some would argue that the Constitution is fluid and it should evolve with times, and we've tried it and we've seen where the sort of gaps, loopholes, bottlenecks are for the country, and maybe it's time we revisited it and actually changed a few things. I mean, look at the wage bill, the number of counties we have, the number of MCAs we have, and the wage bill. We simply can't afford this as a developing country.
We are wasting much more than we can. We are wasting a lot in corruption and all that. If
corruption isn't in the Constitution.
Yeah, it's not in the Constitution.
Oh.
It's basically
It
how
is.
we. It's how
How
we're
is it in the
implementing it.
Constitution?
Chapter 6.
It's chapter
Right, okay.
true, actually, indeed.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Well,
If we
chapter
implemented this
6
thing,
it contradicts the Constitution itself, because we do have a right to choose our leaders, whether or not they meet the integrity bar or not.
yes, but also it just says that all our leaders should actually uphold integrity values, right? If we're all upholding that, then we'd be having smooth flowing.
Two things are
Implementation of
happening
the
in the country.
Constitution.
This corruption discussion sometimes gets tiresome. And we the more we talk about it, sometimes I even feel that we're actually promoting it. There is a drought in this country, a very serious one. In fact, a very severe one. Animals that are known to withstand drought, like camels, are dying. Yes, wildlife are coming out of the wild, so to speak, and coming to human habitation so that they can actually get water.
Right.
It's that severe. Now, this is a problem worth discussing, because these are things that you can foresee. Corruption we can also foresee, yes. In fact, we can't. It's not a question of foreseeing it. It's something
It's here with us.
It's actually more than here with us. It's almost become an integral part of the atmosphere in which we live in. Now, alongside this, we are being told that this matter that appeared yesterday as a small demonstration in Mombasa by people who were demonstrating against the government directive to have all containers from the post moved via the SGR. There are those who want to claim, at least the media reporting, they say that it's now going to start mirroring the Hong Kong protests.
Really?
Yes, and it's on the increase. If you look at the news in the county, expect Hong Kong-like demos. Activists have come in, but at the same time in Lamu, the activists who have brought in, they want to limit the use of borders in the old town. Again, the same pollution issues that we're bringing up. So there's a lot happening, all at the same time.
Retain the heritage of Lamu.
Do you think the guys at the coast can sustain something as long and
You ask as
robust
though they
as
are
Hong
a
Kong?
unique brand of human beings who are incapable
They're
of
pretty
doing such
easygoing, to put it mildly,
things. It isn't a question of the coast.
and like to sit down and
You
chill
see,
out.
this manner that people
Sorry.
who come from what the coast call up country have about the manner in which they go about their business, and they are tagged as being lazy.
I said easygoing.
I have taken it a notch higher.
Okay.
Because it ends up with but you see, they're lazy. If you visit any Mediterranean, any country that borders the coast like Mombasa, you will find that because of the heat, people conduct their business differently. Go to the Middle East and ask yourself the hours they work,
They do
when
have
they take a break.
siestas, but they do work as well.
And I am telling you that the people at the coast also work. This misnomer that upcountry people have, that people at the coast are lazy and they don't work.
The people who are
It is
working at the
not
coast are
true.
people who migrated to the coast. So you have a lot of Kambas or Kikuyus who've gone down to the coast either for business
They are
or to
not
join
more than the
hospitality
indigenous people at
industry.
the coast, unfortunately. They may work, but they're not more than the people at the coast. And those people live in a way that not only helps them, but they have found it necessary to work that way. When you take your ethos of functioning to an environment and you assume yours is better, that is a very unfortunate and discriminatory attitude.
I think 9 to 5 is pretty much universally accepted as working hours for most people, regardless of the weather. But we'll leave it.
Some Zungu thing.
Oh, here we
No,
go.
it's an upcountry thing, because it's actually an irritatingly annoying notion that people have, that when people at the coast go about their business the way they
In
do,
different
that
hours,
they are
they're
lazy.
lazy.
That is utter
You've
nonsense.
managed to frame this debate very, very differently. We're not talking about the working hours. Hours suggesting that maybe
No,
they don't
I'm talking
work
about
enough
working
hours.
ethics. I wasn't talking hours, ethics. The manner in which they go about their business. And you didn't say it. I took the debate a notch higher.
All right.
So something positive then from the coast. There's excitement that's building ahead of the new port opening. The Lamu port is due to be opened next month. This is part of the LAPSET project. And several envoys have visited the 2.5 trillion LAPSET corridor project. Those ones include the ambassador for Ethiopia, South Sudan, the US, UK High Commissioner. They've been there and they've commended the efforts that are being made in the speedy, implementation of that project. So it's going to be launched next month. We'll have a new port in Lamu, finally.
That's great news, I think.
Big thing.
It isn't that we're going to have a new port. We are going to see the completion of the new port. That has been in the works for quite some time. And I'm sure that the president has even made a few comments about it. And somehow, somewhere, there was a delay which shouldn't have been there. This activity that is being spoken about in the opening should have taken place quite a while back. Remember the time the president was supposed to go to Lamu to officiate they couldn't because they hadn't completed it.
And now it's complete.
Well, the same saga played out in Kisumu, did it not?
Yeah.
We still haven't opened the port.
The port has not been opened at Kisumu either yet.
Well, the port, the ceremony for the refurbishment of the port has not taken place. The port doesn't need to be opened; it exists. No, it does exist.
The new refurbished port.
Yes. The commissioning of this new refurbished port has been delayed simply because, whatever works were supposed to be undertaken have not been undertaken.
Okay. Speaking of undertaking, KCB places Mumias Sugar under administration over the 12.5 billion shilling loan. KCB Group... Shall I continue before you sigh in exasperation? KCB Group has placed Mumias Sugar Company under administration after the miller defaulted on loans amounting to 12.5 billion shillings it owes to the bank and other creditors, effectively kicking out the company's board and management. The lender says it appointed consultancy firm PVR Rao to take over the Nairobi Securities Exchange listed firm's operations effective yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
That has happened.
There's going to be a bit of a problem because one of the things that our papers have reported is that there's been a drop in the production of sugar in the country.
Sugar, right.
And for a simple reason, raw materials. People aren't growing cane. So even if KCB takes over and there isn't cane, so there isn't cane to crush, there has to be cane to crush because this is now what produces the economic activity and the economic output that enables the factory to be able to repay this loan.
All of this needs to be taken into consideration, right? Even when they take over the company to say,
I'm sure they've thought of this.
Maybe they have
I'm sure they've thought of this.
Maybe they have a solution.
I am praying and hoping that they do.
Break it up and sell it in pieces.
Well, break it. Whatever they do, let's wait and see how
it's a
this
solution
will be
as well.
Yes. Oh, it is. It is. But remember that something like a sugar factory works on economies of scale. The larger it is, the more people you have contributing to it, the more it is that it'll be viable. You break it up, and essentially, instead of having a factory, you'll have a jaggery factory that only produces one thing.
One thing.
Yes, instead of the multiple byproducts that a sugar factory actually has. Yes.
Mandera is actually in a plea for more banks. The Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mandera chapter, has asked major banks in the country to consider opening branches in the far-flung county to serve locals. Apparently, they're not enough, and they feel forgotten as far as financial institutions are concerned. Almost 90% of our population in business keeps money at home because they cannot access banks, which are only found in Mandera town. We need banks in the other 4 major towns. And locals have been forced to travel far to exchange the 1,000 notes before the September 30th deadline.
Wow.
So this is an issue. They have this money, but they have to really go have to go very far in order to exchange it. Though I don't think these banks will be established in the next 4 days, unfortunately.
They have an issue, actually. That's
There's
a big
an
one.
issue. Yeah.
In Kisii, the county government has acquired 2 firefighting engines worth 64 million shillings. This is each one of them has a water capacity of 10,000 liters and will cost 50 million. The second, with a water capacity of 750 liters, costs 4 million. So one is big, 10,000 liter capacity, and the other one is 750 liters. 750 liters.
Say it again.
Eric.
What? 750? That's a small. That's a what? It's a Land Rover.
750 liters.
Yes, it's less than 1,000
Yes,
liters.
very, very small.
Okay, maybe it's 7,500.
Maybe it's a typo.
I think it's a typo. 7,500 would be more like it. 750 liters is...
A motorbike. A big motorbike.
Yes, but 2 new firefighting engines. Now, we are seeing the fires that are happening in Busia this morning. So therefore, if I hope they have good firefighting engines, because if they do, then they are sorted. If they don't, then they are in trouble.
And all the records of Busia County are up in flames.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
This happened in Migori as well.
Fire.
It also happened at Maseno University. In fact, the administration block that had results and all the things that pertain to the university. What is unfortunate is that there had been issues surrounding results, and people had queried the same problem that happened at JKU had. It had happened at Maseno. And while these queries were going on, lo and behold, the administration block that houses all this information burnt down.
Burnt down.
Remember the fire engines that had been bought by Bomet County in the last time, and it was a laughing stock because people were saying that they're using car wash equipment to fight fires.
Yes. Because yes.
And the governor was saying, well, this is we make do with what we have, and this is what we have. That's what we're going to do with.
I know we're going to go, but there's one thing I think we need to highlight this morning, talking about the fact that everybody's being asked to bring the 1,000 shilling old notes. CBK has issued warning over dirty money buying wheat in Narok County. Wheat farmers in Narok could be the latest beneficiaries of dirty cash as the rush to clean up the old 1,000 shilling notes enters the home stretch. The Central Bank of Kenya said yesterday it was concerned about the spike in wheat cash buyers in Narok, noting that it is working with the relevant investigative authorities to ensure that the money launderers do not use wheat harvesting season to beat the system.
Do you know where there's going to be thousands of 1,000 shilling notes? Kibra. These elections, money is going to be thrown.
Literally.
Jerry, every once in a while you come up with something that is yes. You know,
Always.
I was thinking about, as you said, I said, but we've never had a situation where people are camping. Ford Kenya is camping. ANC is camping. Jubilee is camping. ODM is camping. Aye. Huh?
This is it.
Yes, and the leaders are at the forefront.
Everybody is there.
Everyone is there. The only people
Uhuru's not there. Let's clarify.
Raila is also not there. I mean,
He has to be seen to
big
not be there
parties.
strategically.
Well, then let's throw in Uhuru also, who doesn't have to be seen to be there. Yes. What I'm saying is, but they're represented heavily. The parties are represented
Sure.
heavily.
There's great visibility on the ground.
Oh, yes.
It's a hotly contested seat. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 6:30. We've been taking a look at what's been covered in the headlines. Remember, you can download the standard e-paper app on Google Play Store and Apple App Store. And, of course, you can just pay one standard fee and access all standard newspaper publications. Good morning.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles. Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where, and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
98.7 Spice FM, Mombasa.
All right, an accident along Ngong Road this morning, and a car has rammed off the road into the gutters. Hope all is well. Otherwise, after that, it's clear. We have that there have been rescue operations at that point to make sure that everything runs smooth after that. Ngong Road near the footbridge of Madaraka is tight, bumper to bumper this morning, and that is leading towards the City Stadium roundabout. Right now, Thika Road is clear. If you want to get out of that place, now is the time to do so, because not much traffic on that particular part of the road. All right, Mombasa Road, yes. Actually now bumper to bumper right after the General Motors area. And that's leading all the way down past Airtel. So it's heavy right now, and we see that going on for some time. Langata Road coming down towards the T-Mall roundabout and heading towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Also, we're going to have some issues there this morning as traffic has already begun to build up. Let's take a look at what the situation is in about half an hour. But for now, if you're on a particular part in the city that you see we need to send some information out about, give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 24 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Hashtag Situation Room. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live streaming, of course, on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, Spice FM KE, and also on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke, on YouTube as well, Spice FM KE. Our frequencies around the country, 97.6 in Malindi, 90.9 in Nyeri, Eldoret 96.7, Nakuru 96.0, 102.5 in Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, and 94.4 in Nairobi. Well, in the Situation Room this morning, you've got C.T. Muga, Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko, and I'm Eric Latif. Let's talk about disaster preparedness and management in this country, right? So, Kenya has had a fair share of its disasters in the last couple of years. Well, since independence, but let's just concentrate in the last couple of years. We've had cases of terrorism, we've had cases of fires, we've had cases of buildings collapsing, and flooding in various parts of the country. Even now, in every year, we have cases of famine and distribution of relief food. In many of these cases, what we see is a humanitarian response to these disasters. First responders are usually the people, ordinary citizens nearby, who come in and respond. We see hospitals crumbling, ambulances and taking in people who've been injured from disasters. We've seen Red Cross officials on the ground, very clearly labeled, wearing the Red Cross jackets. And then we also see government officials arriving, police officers coming to cordon off the area. We see a disaster management unit coming in to, try and coordinate the rescue operation and disaster management. But in all of this, the government appears not to have a lot of capacity to deal with disasters. So I'm saying this morning, because we've seen Red Cross dealing with disasters in the country, we should empower the Kenya Red Cross and fund it to be the primary disaster response unit for Kenya.
A solution, a suggestion. Eric, it makes sense, really. It makes sense. We do have a bill in Parliament, don't we?
There's a bill in Parliament. So this bill is called the National Disaster Management Authority Bill. It seeks to transform what we have currently as the National Disaster Management Unit into an authority. That makes it an independent body, not domiciled anywhere, but just an independent body, which will have a board, which will have a CEO in the form of a director general, which will have, of course, budgetary allocation, and it will be in charge of disaster management. The board will be comprised of principal secretaries. It's basically a government organ. PS for Treasury, PS for Interior, PS for Health, PS for Agriculture, PS for Devolution, and such. and then the Director General, and it'll have a secretariat. So we're going to have offices opened. We're going to equip, keep the offices, furniture and all. We're going to have vehicles for the NDMA. Then we're going to have people who will be sitting in Nairobi, the headquarters of NDMA, looking at disasters across the country. And when a disaster happens again, we will see Red Cross on the ground dealing with that disaster.
You know, it's interesting. If we're going to have, because it's clear that these disasters are on the increase, and so you want to set up a commission of sorts to deal with it, isn't it?
Yes.
Why don't we just have a PS for corruption as well? Because it's so widespread. Well, we know the police department uses it as a crime, but why don't we look at it as a growth industry? Something that is widespread, it's acceptable, and it's something Kenyans have embraced.
It's there anyway.
I'm being facetious, but your point is a valid one. Privatizing disaster management.
Yes.
Or
in some way.
Or making it a public-private partnership.
You know what we have, actually? If you look at disasters, let's take a look at what happened at 14 Riverside the other day, right? The first people who were responding there were private citizens. You know, we saw them coming in, and people who had their own weapons, and they were storming
Eric,
in there,
you've taken it
and they were
further.
helping people.
When this school wall collapsed the other day, the first respondents were the citizens.
The local people.
The anger, why the army had to be brought in, because the locals were angry. They talked about the time when they had actually made the calls and the response time.
How long it took.
It took, yes. So this public-private partnership suggestion of yours to me seems like a very viable option.
Yes, and actually that's what I'm saying, that it should be spearheaded by Red Cross, and then Red Cross is able to bring in other private organizations to come and help, to come and work with.
They actually are. They actually are really performing the functions of the government. If
Absolutely.
You look
the government has a duty to protect lives and properties and come in where, to mitigate disasters. So I'm not keen on this quasi-public model that you're suggesting whereby there's private intervention. I mean, of course, given the nature of disasters, it becomes a humanitarian cause whereby, we act on emotion more than anything. But it can be a dangerous or a slippery slope to go by if you start to privatize disaster, because if these are profit-driven companies, for instance, who's to say, and this is an extreme sort of example, who's to say they won't cause disasters so as to make money, or they won't try and avert disasters so as to make money? If they're profit-making companies that we're bringing in, when you talk about PPPs and the idea of bringing private companies into this public...
let me go with your thinking. We have policemen who are supposed to ensure security, yet the security industry is a growth industry. So are we saying that people have actually gone into the business of creating crime so that the security industry can increase?
It's not too far-fetched. Let me give you an example of where that's happened in the USA with the prison system, where they privatized the prison system, and as a result, prisons stopped trying to rehabilitate their inmates, and what they did is they were happy to take reoffenders because that's a repeat client. Services then become, people become clients as opposed to members of the general public who are owed this duty by the government. So for me, I don't agree with it, and I think the government would be shouldering the burden of that duty onto private companies. And the other thing that comes up is who's to blame if something goes wrong. So things like human rights issues, if something occurs or a duty that is owed by the government is not discharged by these private companies, who do we then go to for recourse?
So is it that the idea in and of itself doesn't work, or is it that the examples you're giving are examples
No,
of where it doesn't work
it's
well?
the notion of bringing private companies into state duties. So, for instance, security, bringing G4S into prison transport in the UK became a major issue because some things happened to prisoners on one occasion, and who could they turn to? In terms of as a human rights issue. So we have to be very careful. There's public duties, and we have to be very careful that we don't mix them with private companies. Private companies, their business is to make money. The government owes us a duty to protect lives and properties. We need to put them to task on that. Also with things like the Red Cross, which is funded by voluntary states, we then don't know the level of interference from other countries, given that other countries are also funding the Red Cross. So in a case of, let's say, I'm giving you really extreme scenarios so that we can visualize and envisage the potential pitfalls of all of this. So for instance, let's say there's a war between two countries. Where would the Red Cross go? Who would it be saving? Would it be seen as interference? Would it go to the side where, that state gives more money to the Red Cross than the other state, for instance. So there's a few complexities that can arise from this. Although the Red Cross is now it's actually looking to make profits. They now have a hotel, and a lot of organizations and NGOs and charities are actually moving towards
self-sustainability.
Revenue generating activities. So maybe they would be getting their money from there, not from donor states. But for me, I think it does have potential pitfalls, and it can be a slippery slope to go down.
It isn't slippery at all. I mean, if you look at the notion and you look at it in its purity, we claim that the government isn't a business entity. It is. Everything that the government does for us, we pay for.
But we have a very good contract with the government in the name of the Constitution. We have a good understanding with the government. The Red Cross owes us as Kenyans nothing.
The reason why we are thinking this way is because that contract is constantly abrogated. We have this contract which the government never fulfills.
Yeah, it doesn't
They
fulfill
fall short
at all.
all the time.
So why are we paying taxes? You've got to understand the structures of government in that we're tied to each other. We pay taxes, and they have a duty of care to us, so to speak.
So in the case of Kenya Red Cross, so the Red Cross, first of all, is established under the Geneva Convention. Kenya is a signatory to the Geneva Convention, and that's how come we have the Kenya Red Cross. So the Kenya Red Cross is actually a Kenyan chapter. It's different from the ICRC. And the Kenya Red Cross is actually anchored in law in Kenya. There's a Kenya Red Cross Act, where the government of Kenya recognizes the Kenya Red Cross. So it's actually a legal body recognized by law, managed by Kenyan law. All right? So this is already a quasi-government, a quasi-Kenyan outfit, if you look at it that way.
Okay.
So if we say that now, instead of spending a budget and
who are they
creating
accountable to? Are they accountable? Can the Auditor General actually go and look at their books? Are they accountable to taxpayers? They are accountable to taxpayers.
They are accountable.
The Red Cross.
No, they are not accountable to taxpayers because we do not give them our money. What Eric is suggesting
Well, we
is
do
what
sometimes
would
in the
make
form
it
of
is-
Safaricom.
we do that. We would do that.
we would do that, and then we'd be able to do what you're suggesting. Yes.
Because there's a law. We can just amend that law and say, look at all these things that we're saying, the NDMA bill, the NDMA law.
That sounds like MDMA, the drug.
The drug, right? Now look at, if we actually went and amended the Kenya Red Cross law and said, yes, so now you shall be receiving funds from the government, and therefore you shall be accountable to the people.
Well, then you
can also
become
increase-
like any other state institution.
No,
There's
it
no
doesn't.
difference between yourself and any other state agency.
The point is, we are starting from
It's
a point
the
where
very independence of the Red Cross that I think allows it to be as successful as it is.
If we look at a situation where we pretend that the Red Cross was not in existence and look at the disasters that we've been seeing occurring in this country over time, what agency or what state body has been
Seen at the forefront of these things.
or even created to do this.
who
So
has
look,
helped?
there's
Now
the-
look at the scenario where disasters have happened in the country and the Red Cross has been at the forefront. Has there been any kind of assistance from other agencies to come out and help? We've seen maybe the Kenya Army. We've seen coming out to help in terms of rescue.
NYS.
We've seen NYS. Kenya Police at some point, coming through to help. But in terms of actually managing, rescuing, bringing people out, sending them to hospital, providing medical care and medical attention, evacuation, etc., which body would then be able to stand instead of the Red Cross if they were not there? And so if we are not able to answer that question and say who would then be able to fill in the space, then perhaps we need to actually think of them as the augment that would come in and say, we are going to actually come in and do this. We given the responsibility to do this.
If not Red Cross, then who?
Exactly.
The government. These are services the government should be providing.
So
over
here
the
we
last
are.
20
Ambulances.
years, over the last 20 years,
No,
it
we
has
haven't
not
seen-
been done.
Well, maybe we need to start
20
electing our
years.
leaders properly.
No. This one has nothing to do with electing leaders. No.
If we had the right leaders,
No,
we'd have
no,
the
no,
services in
no,
place.
no,
Absolutely.
It's not work.
We have elected leaders.
No.
How many times have we had a chance to elect leaders? We've changed leaders over
We
and
keep
over
changing
again
them over and
since
over and over and over and
1963.
over. No.
We have
no,
a government
no,
now
no.
that has
Yet
actually
we-
even said,
No.
so this particular
No.
unit, currently the unit that deals with the disaster management is called the NDMU, right? The National Disaster Management Unit. It was set up in 2013. What happened? When we had the fire incident at JKIA. Right?
Yes.
So we had a huge fire incident. We had many people coming in and uncoordinated response. And because of the international exposure of JKIA, it was very clear that you guys are
We're not prepared.
You're not prepared. And then you also don't have coordination. There's a disaster here. Who is in charge? Where is the chain of command? We didn't see, you see, the kind of issues we had in Westgate. The issues of
Precisely.
chain of command.
Yeah, who was coming in, who was
is in
operating,
charge
who was
here?
at the head.
Exactly.
And it turned
So
out
that's
to
why
be
now
a
we
mess.
set up the NDMU as a multi-agency task force. It brings in the police officers. A senior police officer is seconded there. It brings in other people. Construction experts are seconded there. All these guys are coming in. Still, they do not have capacity. Yes, they know they can come in there and say, no, let's bring in the military. No, you Red Cross guys, you're going to be settled there. You are going to be, but you don't have the you don't have the ambulances. You don't have the fire emergency.
There has to be someone in charge, and we don't have that person. So this is what this seems to say. Look, some years ago, we had a drowning incident in Mtongwe Ferry in Mombasa.
Yes.
Fortunately, the Navy is based there. So they were able to do
quickly.
Yes, but people still died, very many. But then we had a similar boat disaster just a couple of years ago in Naivasha. The Navy had to come in again. Now, what you're talking about, if the government was to actually pull their weight, they would have had bases near certain water bodies. So that when such a thing happens, you don't have to ferry people all the way from Mombasa to actually ensure that these things get done. Fire. Have you seen the fire engines we actually have at the airport? It's like a museum.
Something to see.
It's like a
something
museum.
to see. Right.
You actually marvel and you say, if something were to happen, and it did happen, okay?
Yes.
And we did see, they were unable to respond. And yet, as you taxi at that airport, you'll find there's around 8. 7 of these, if you look carefully, those things haven't moved in years. All I'm trying to say is...
well, in fairness, for the airport, because of that international exposure and all, those engines work. Okay, we haven't seen those engines.
My friend,
they can be there.
The fire
if they're not
engine
working.
is not in. The purpose is not for it to move
it's
forward.
not for it
Not
to
for it to move. It's actually for it to function and for firefighting.
And to be able to fight the
when
fire.
when you have new flights coming to
moving
Kenya,
forward.
we see them washing the planes.
Eric, don't mess up a good thing. You had a good argument which we're beginning to support. Now you're watering it down.
All right, go ahead.
Look, Njeri, you are the lawyer here. Tell me, quite aside from legal structures that we've had which clearly don't work, can we not create a legal framework that would enable a partnership between, say, the private sector? And is it possible to pursue such a thought?
Absolutely.
Yes.
But that's a lot of countries do that. And we do have that in terms of development and infrastructure development. We do have PPPs, as you call them, private public partnerships. With regards to public service and bringing the private sector into that, there are potential pitfalls which I highlighted. So, for instance, would the private sector faction of a PPP be more focused on profit making than safety, for instance? So let's say we privatize aspects of the SGR. Would they be cutting costs on maintenance in order to make money? So you've got to look at things like that. Also, the government does have a duty to deliver its public services. They can't offload that onto a private company, because if we have an issue with that service, who do we then address regarding that service? So there's a few issues that come in. But with regards to public service, there's been many cases and many examples where the private sector comes into it. I've given you a damning one with the US and the prison service, where they've privatized that, and it's a public service, the prison service, to rehabilitate and to make sure you don't have offenders on the streets and in the public. But when you privatize that, you have other interests that override those of the public. So that's the danger. So if you look at disaster management, I mean, I've given you something really extreme and almost absurd, but if you look at the disaster management sector, if you're to bring in private companies that are profit making, can you see how they will maybe not look to mitigate disasters so as to make money when a disaster occurs? I know that sounds absurd, but that is the very model of businesses. That's how they work. You have, for instance, software companies that make antivirus software. They actually create viruses so that they have a job. They have business. So they have business.
But
so I mean, I'm going to the extreme end so that I can highlight and illustrate the potential pitfalls of giving public service delivery to the private sector. They are business focused. They're money focused, profit orientated. The minute you bring them into public service, their interests might conflict at times. They would be cutting corners sometimes in order to make money. Profit is their business. whereas the government is not looking to make profits. They're looking, or they're supposed to deliver services.
In the case of the Kenya Red Cross, the Kenya Red Cross Service, profit is not their business. Right?
It's never been.
It's never been their business. So we're not talking about, say
So,
at G4S becomes
okay, we
the
were
one
talking
that runs
about
it.
PPP, so
Yes.
the idea of private.
Yes.
I don't know what body the Red Cross falls under in terms of how we would categorize it.
A
Is it
non-profit
regarded
and a non-profit
so it's an
humanitarian.
NGO.
Yes,
Yes.
a non-profit
It's an
humanitarian.
NGO. Well, then we run the risk of interfering with policy when we bring NGOs because perhaps they're supported by foreign funding. Do you see what I mean?
Our
It's-
government
all
is
of-
supported by foreign
Oh,
funding.
absolutely.
How does that interfere with what we do
It
in
does.
businesses?
And
It's a
it
nation's
does.
it's a nation's fund, and then it gets basically distributed at country level.
Yes.
For all the would you say establishments per country, per nation. And so now if we're looking at, I want to take us, if we look at what has not been working, and one of the key aspects of development is they're actually able to look at the situation as it is and say that here we have not had it has not worked. We have had disaster upon disaster upon disaster, and we see one establishment or one institution having been able to have helped time and time and time and time again. Why then can we not give it to them to help the country? Because they've not proved that we had a disaster, for example, 2013 when JKIA went up in flames, basically, and that is when a committee was established to then deal with disasters, as if they never happened before. So we've got to look at it. We have to look at it from the point of we don't have. And we keep talking about collective will. We keep talking about corruption. We keep talking about things that don't allow us to establish things that will actually move this country forward or actually deal with the situations that we find ourselves in time and time and time again. But here we have an outfit that has been able to make it work. Why can't we use what is working to make sure that we don't have these disasters taking us to levels where we can't come back from?
Indeed. And in all these places where it has worked alongside government. It actually follows the government's lead. When the Red Cross is responding to any emergency or any disaster, it actually follows the government's lead. So where do you want us to be? This is where we are. We are providing this. So we have volunteers on the ground. We've got ambulances on the ground. We've got people on the ground. We have our teams here. We've got people that we've trained. They're here. They're available. We are following your lead. So this is the case where we're just telling them, yes, we follow. You still follow the government's lead. But instead of creating a new body that is not going to have any capacity like you have, let's just use your capacity.
So let's just start giving you our taxpayers' money, but you're not accountable to the taxpayer.
You
That's
will be
basically
accountable
what
from
we're
that
saying.
point.
Do you know what is of interest?
So you then
here?
become a government body, as opposed to an NGO.
No, you don't become a government body per se. You're receiving funds, yes, from the government, but you.
But shouldn't those funds be going to our own agencies that are tasked with delivering these
which
services?
never deliver.
Which
They
one?
don't
Okay, so what? We
deliver.
just
Which
put our
one?
hands up and say, hell, it's
Don't
not working.
implies that
Well,
they do
we
from
might
time
as
to
well
time.
get management consultants to come and run Kenya then and forget this idea of having our own democracy, having
you know
our
what?
own
If it gets to a certain
Actually,
point,
we
let's
do
do that.
Actually, Jerry, we do get management consultants who are
come and
paid
tell
billions of shillings to tell us what we already know. And then when it doesn't work, we get another set of consultants who come and tell us or negate what the other ones do.
Or we set up a commission or a committee to find out why this did not
These
work.
are well-trodden paths. But what makes it interesting is this. There actually was a time when everything you're discussing here actually worked. There were ambulances attached to hospitals. And you could call 999 or 911 or 991 and the ambulance would actually come. Or
would
the
arrive.
police would come. Yes.
Then the question I would have
Yes.
to ask then is what happened between when these systems were functioning properly to the point whereby we have nothing happening at all, to the point where we look at, just as an example, the Westgate disaster, or the Westgate attack, whereby we even had international security operations coming in and taking the lead in this country with its own sovereignty, taking the lead because it seemed as if, there was there was total
We were totally
confusion.
uncoordinated.
There was
Among the people who were
total
seeing on the ground.
uncoordination.
I think terrorism.
When you have a situation,
What happened?
You have units in this country that are trained to deal with terrorism. You do. By the way, you
Oh
do.
yes, and quite
And well trained.
very well trained.
But then you have the army coming in and the boss of the army coming and decides that the best course of action
Is this one?
is to bazooka a section of the mall. This is a civilian situation. And we do have people who are trained to manage situations within civilian settings.
When all those are doing that, then we also do not have a proper public body that's coordinating
No.
the rescue.
No.
Because rescue of people was very, very important. Who
Yes,
did
it
we
is.
see on the ground? We saw Abbas Gulet of Kenya Red Cross leading from the forefront, saying, all right, so let's put our ambulances here. We've got people on third floor. They need to move. We've
We
got
had
people
the
on this
and
floor.
then, and
they
then
need to
to
move.
the contrary, we had the then Minister for Interior who seemed to not know what was happening
wasn't-
at all.
No.
and the Inspector General of Police.
You
about the
actually,
Sieke.
you actually need to be fair to the gentleman.
Who?
The then Minister
At
for
that
Interior.
time, at that time was
Olelenku.
No,
How
you
much-
cannot
No,
say.
let's tell it as it is.
Uh,
man.
come
no,
on,
no, no,
CT.
no, no,
But
no, no.
have I even said what I'm about
Okay,
to
please.
say?
So this is
go
it.
ahead.
We're
I
coming to
know-
the top of the hour. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation we're having this morning, I'm saying that we should basically give the Kenya Red Cross the job of disaster management and response. What do you think? 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice and
All right.
gas.
Makini Road, there seems to be quite an issue there because people are trying to drop their children off to school and come out at the same time, so there is quite a mess. Zanzibar Road in South B, pavements have been overtaken by cars. Pedestrians have to walk on the road at the same time as school buses and other vehicles, so there is quite the situation there. All right. Heavy traffic on Gong Road, community area towards New Area Road, estate via, and so people are using the estates now to come back to the main road, and that is causing quite some traffic spilling over to the area near the city mortuary roundabout. There has been an accident also at that particular area, so you know that is what is causing that traffic. Looking at the Thika Superhighway coming towards the Pangani overpass underpass as usual, we do have some traffic, but that will clear up as the minutes tick by. Coming round about to 7 o'clock, approaching the CBD from Jogo Road, heading towards the City Stadium roundabout. It's not so bad at this point, but it will definitely get better. Mombasa Road, we have the usual situation whereby there is traffic bumper to bumper, but that will dissipate as we go along. Send us a message or give us a call, 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way
It's
to
2 minutes
start
past
your
7 o'clock.
day.
Good morning. You're in the Situation Room. It's hashtag Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We are also on YouTube, Spice FM KE, on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. The conversation always happens on Twitter as well, on hashtag Situation Room, on our handle, Spice FM KE. Let me just tell you where we are across the country. 94.4 in Nairobi. In Mombasa, we're on 87.9. In Kisumu, 102.5. In Nakuru, 96.0. 96.7 in Eldoret. 90.9 in Nyeri. 97.6 in Malindi. Now, the conversation that we're having this morning is on disaster preparedness and management and response. And we've seen instances where the government seems to be uncoordinated in terms of response. We've seen instances where other private organizations have come in and they've shown to be better managers of disaster. We've seen instances where the humanitarian organization, the Kenya Red Cross, which is recognized under Kenyan law, has actually been at the forefront and has done a good job in managing and disaster.
I've done a fantastic
job, as CT says, in managing our disasters. So instead of creating a body, because there's a bill in Parliament that is proposing to have the National Disaster Management Authority created, instead of doing that and giving it funds, and it'll never be able to buy ambulances and fire engines and distribute relief food across the country and help people who are facing flood and other disasters, why don't you just give this money to the Kenya Red Cross and empower the Kenya Red Cross and have the Kenya Red Cross sort us out? And Jerry does not agree.
Ambulances we will be able to buy, my friend. Please remember.
That's easy.
The Red
No.
Cross was looking to lease out ambulances to counties
Yes.
just a few years ago at 900,000 shillings per month.
Yes.
Already you can see what the interests of the Red Cross are there. That's a profit-making...
No.
absolutely.
It doesn't mean that.
It's-
What is it that came with the lease? Is it just
It means
ambulances
we
you
are
can
giving
buy?
you capacity.
We're giving you
Instead of buying,
a
Full
compact.
operation.
Yes,
Full
exactly.
operation.
when you
It's
say
not an
capacity,
ambulance.
it's the leadership and management that we would be buying
and the
into.
infrastructure as well, the ambulance as well. Yes, the
an
management.
entire county. And how
No,
much?
no, no. What I'm talking about is when your suggestion or your proposition that we should incorporate Red Cross into government. Basically, we should start giving them money through our taxes so that they become the main or the permanent or dominant
The main
service
agency
provider
for-
for
yes.
any management,
That was a
disaster
suggestion
management.
which was intended to give them more prominence and just to allow them through government structures to do what the government
So
cannot
we
do.
basically, instead of setting up our own unit, which would be like the Red Cross, we just absorb Red Cross into the government
Yes.
and they become part of government.
Not necessarily. That's why I asked for a legal framework that would enable us to work with them. We
Arm's
have
length,
yes, but the key thing is here that the function
We
that is
already
required.
do.
No, we don't. Not fully.
We do.
we
I
don't
mean, they've
give
been
them the money.
Not
incorporated
fully.
into the law.
Not fully.
Yes,
we
but
contribute.
They get
basically, we
donations.
Yeah, we contribute to the
True.
kitty.
They get
Basically,
donations.
what happens? We contribute to a global kitty, and then it is now distributed at country level, and that is how the Red Cross is able to operate in Kenya. Now, what we are saying is that we've had. The country alone is replete with examples of how we've not been able to manage our disasters. Just before we went to the break, we were talking about what happened at Westgate. It was a disaster, literally. It was a disaster
Within a
within
disaster.
a disaster in terms of how we were able to handle it, or in this case, not handle it. And you can just imagine, apart from what happened in terms of human life loss and this the tragedy and the horror that happened, look at what it did for the optics in terms of this country and how we were able to actually handle things that happen. And we have these occurrences coming time and time and time again. Just before we went, CT was about to tell us what it looked like, because here we had we had the Red Cross coming in, helping, basically trying to take the lead. We had our own here interior minister who just did not seem to know the beginning from the end.
let me give you an example. So we
It was clear that was what was going on. He did not
Exactly.
know what was happening. So if we say we have government agencies who are tasked with the mandate to be able to operate such things, and here we have the lead, the head, the supposed lead, who should know all the agencies or the departments under him or her, knowing what should be done, and they didn't seem to know how to sort it out from the next guy who was standing next
if
to
you
him.
actually look at that case, so you had the security agencies were dealing with, well, we've got terrorists inside here, we need to flush them out, we need to deal with them, right? And they also ought to have been thinking, we have people who are trapped there, we need to rescue them. We've got people who may have died, we need to actually get them out. We've got people who are seeking to know the whereabouts of their kin and friends, we need to address that. Who coordinated all that? The Red Cross.
You
It
know
actually
something,
came
Eric?
and dealt with that.
The
The security
stories-
guys dealt with security.
The stories surrounding Westgate, they are varied, some unsubstantiated, but that situation had been under control from some sources within the first half an hour. It was they had checkmated the terrorists. Then this drama unfolded, and something that had already been contained suddenly blew out of proportion completely. You know, there is this myth that the government doesn't do business. It does. It always does. When they borrow money, that's business because they repay it with interest. When they promise to provide us with services, it's business. And we accept. That's why we pay these taxes. We accept. And why there's this issue is because those taxes don't do what they're supposed to do. So when one suggests that perhaps this money, instead of the government pretending to do something they will never do,
Give it to somebody who's on
give it to somebody who's already doing
No,
Who's
it.
that
doing
is
it.
not the way governance works. I mean, this is a
Why can't it change?
fundamental
No.
constitutional duty of the government to provide protection of goods and property and lives rather. and we can't discount
It's a
it, or they can't.
contradiction. The
they cannot
government is
discharge
supposed to
that
provide
duty.
security,
We're not
and yet
outsourcing
security is paid for by individuals in the form of guards.
Well,
It's a reality. You are talking about the theory of what the government is supposed to do, but there's a reality of what we face on a daily basis.
so you don't think we should put the government to task, and this should actually be the reason we vote?
Putting them to task how?
Jerry,
Get the job done.
By suggesting this, we're actually putting the government to task.
And
because
you
this is what
realize this erodes the political accountability for government as well. But most importantly, let me ask you, if we were to establish,
it actually stamps. It actually brings to the fore the government's ineptitude, and nothing could put it under more pressure than this.
To actually say, you know what? Just
If
very
you
simply
remove the
saying you're not
pressure
doing
from
your
the
job, give
people-
it to somebody else to do. It shows you, it actually brings to the light that you are actually not doing your job.
Your
so where
uselessness
do
is
we
brought to the
stop?
fore.
With what sector do we stop? Should we then outsource education?
No, let's
Should
go.
we
Let's
then
go.
outsource health?
We'll go step by
Should
step.
We've already outsourced education.
And what level of
you have private
independence-
Private
institutions that
schools.
provide it.
What level of independence would the Red Cross then have? Would they fall under?
I
Would they be
asked-
subject to, say, procurement laws?
But I
How-
asked for a framework. Remember, I said,
Well, there
is
isn't
it
one
possible?
established.
You see, we can create a framework. This is a proposal. And now from this point, we now start creating a framework. We say, yes, we need the Red Cross to retain its autonomy, number one. But what we are doing as government is, instead of creating another body that is going to take 10, 15 or 25 years to actually get to a full
Are
capacity.
we hiring the
let's-
Red Cross in essence?
In essence,
Is it
let's
contracting
even
the
say
Red
that.
Cross?
Let's even say we're doing that.
Look.
Let's say we're just saying that the Kenya Red Cross is the body that's going to be used by the government as the principal agency for disaster response and management.
That is already the default position, I think.
Imagine that.
But
Imagine
It's
that,
not to
and yet
say
we
it
are
is
not.
the
and
correct
yet,
position.
And yet, what we are trying to
true,
do now
for
is
purpose of discussion, you are right. But look at the Ministry of Health. There were these ambitious plans to lease equipment in order to help alleviate problems, major problems that people were facing in the health sector. What followed was disaster. One, equipment did come into the country. They were leased. Reports that you read in the papers, a great many of those, that equipment doesn't work. Nobody knows what to do with it. It's
Not
there.
well maintained. etc.
Then there was another step taken, same ministry, to bring in containers that were essentially self-contained health units. The last story one heard was those things were rotting somewhere at the port or doing something. They'll be bought.
they take too long.
They will be bought. There's no question about it. They'll even come into the country.
And in the event of a disaster, we're talking about life and death. Time is
Yes.
of the essence.
But
how soon and how fast you react
It's not
is
just
very,
the
very
equipment,
important.
it's not just the purchasing, but why are you trying to get the government body that has proven consistently not to do anything they say they will do, and yet you have people within the country
who are operating
doing
and
it.
Who are
can
already
actually
doing
get the
this
job
thing.
done. They're
Yes.
already operating under this.
And in this particular case, there's a relationship between you, the government, and those people who are
Yes,
doing it.
already.
There's already a relationship.
it is in they are a legal entity within your boundaries, within your country.
You know, we've talked about Westgate, right? That happened a couple of years ago. Now, this year, we know what happened at 14 Riverside. And we saw the kind of response that we received. So we say that this time the security agencies were better, prepared to deal with it. They actually operated better. But we also saw, still, we had the Kenya Red Cross going in there. Much of the rescue operation of the people who were pulled out of the building or basically assisted out of the building was done by people who were being coordinated by the Kenya Red Cross. Abbas Guled, the immediate former Secretary General of Red Cross, was there. And this is what he was saying. Listen to this.
I would like to take this opportunity just to give you guys a situation report, and from here then move on and the CS will talk. So it's just to say that my name is Abbas Guled. I work for Kenya Red Cross as Secretary General. Okay, so I have been in this business of humanitarian work for 45 years, and of these 45 years, I have seen lots of things as one could imagine. Kenya, over the last 10 plus years, we've seen our own fair share of emergencies and disasters, man-made or natural. But what I want to say is that what we have seen here in the last 18 or less than 20 hours is that a very well coordinated operation led by the government of Kenya, and the government of Kenya took charge and responsibility because of the lessons learned from previous terrorist attack that has occurred in our great country. What I want to say, there was a full coordination, and this coordination resulted in this operation being completed a short while ago. This operation was run and managed by the Kenya Police Force through Reke and other parts
You
of
hear
the
what he's saying? This basically is the Red Cross saying, yes, we were here on the ground, we were following the orders of the government, but we were. In fact, he's been allowed to be the first one to speak before the CS speaks. Because he's the man who's gotten people help.
They ran the operation basically, and
Yes.
this is what I mean. At the end of the day,
he was
they
the
ran
man
it.
on the ground. Yes, he was taking orders, following orders from the security agencies who know exactly what's happening. But he, in terms of execution of this, of rescue, of response, he was the one doing it. The Red Cross was the one
And
doing
the
it.
government came out of it looking good.
And exactly.
It's like they know who is needed to help get something done, and they brought the person in.
And it's okay, you still get your stripes, but you know, at the end of the day, we need these things to be done. You can imagine a situation if it was because they basically say, you've shown us who you are over time. You've shown us that you're either able or unable. And we're saying that it cannot continue to be that way. And history has taught us, nature has taught us, just like we say, disasters, man-made or natural. They've shown us that these things will occur, whether we like it or not. Historically, you've shown us that you've not been in a position. You've been in a position, but you have not been able to manage it. You've not been able to get it done. And we will have these occurrences, whether we like it or not. The occurrences will come. How are we going to manage them when, as government, who is mandated to secure, as citizens, to make sure that, you know, all your citizens are taken care of and within a safe, even when these disasters come out, to make sure that there's rescue and there's management and there's rehabilitation? You've shown us that you've not been able to do it. So are we going to continue in this status? Something
way.
has to be done.
No way. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Just to recap, the conversation this morning is around disaster management and response for the country. So there's a bill in Parliament that is seeking to establish a new body, that's the National Disaster Management Authority. Well, that means that we'll have a body, we'll have a board, we'll have a secretariat, a general director general, we'll have staff working there, we'll have offices, we'll furnish it, and then we'll have people on the ground, you know, NDMA offices across the country. Instead of spending that money on that, why not just appoint the Kenya Red Cross as the primary disaster response and management agency of the country and direct the funds to the Kenya Red Cross? Because the Kenya Red Cross needs money. The Kenya Red Cross has actually proven and shown to us that it's capable of handling disaster preparedness. Of course, still it'll be taking orders from the government on how to coordinate a response. But in terms of operation, in terms of dealing with the humanitarian issues, the Kenya Red Cross is better equipped than the government ever will be at this rate. Our telephone line 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. We're opening up the phone lines now to hear what you think. Also on Facebook, Spice FM KE, where we are live streaming, and on Twitter, Spice FM KE, and the hashtag is Situation Room. We'd love to know what you think. So we're saying that, you know, if we created a legal framework that allows them to retain their independence, their autonomy, but also we're channeling a certain amount of money to them for disaster response, that would help. That would be better than coming and creating a new body and saying let us have a new body, call it NDMA, and NDMA will now be in charge of disaster response. They will never have the capacity that Red Cross has.
Interesting when hearing that speech, some disasters are natural and some are man-made. Man-made, of course, he's alluding to terrorism, of which if we're to expect the Red Cross to be taking charge of terrorism, we're discharging a very fundamental function of government in security. But not just that, we're also opening ourselves up to compromise. We don't know what the agendas of the Red Cross may be. These aren't people we have elected. These might not be Kenyans. They might be a conflict of interest. It's a slippery slope to go down. As a country, we have our sovereignty and we want to be able to run our national affairs. Would they then be involved in averting terrorism, or, you know, to what extent would they then be part of the disaster management? Because disaster management is not just stopping the disasters, it's also averting these disasters. So if we talk about something like terrorism and we say the Red Cross is the key, not even agency, is responsible for averting terrorism, are we not then bringing in private companies, international bodies, people who may not be loyal to Kenya per se? Are we not then bringing them into the fold when it comes to matters of national security? There's all these issues to consider, to be honest.
You don't need to go into security. So you see, if it's
terrorism, security is at the backbone of.
If it's a security related issue, then the security agencies are definitely on top of it. That's their job to avert.
So you're saying
That's their
they
job to
only
keep
come into natural disasters
at response stage.
All right, at
Right?
response
At
stage.
response stage
At
and at
response
management
stage,
stage.
do you not think maybe you need some sensitive information that only government should have?
And the government
for
will be there.
So, and the government should be giving them that information, or they
government
would
will be
work
there.
together.
Yes.
So, what if we had somebody who'd embedded themselves, a terrorist, who'd embedded themselves in the
With
Red
the Red
Cross?
Cross.
Because they're not going to have, say, the rigorous processes that we might have as a country for security. And here we are working with them. I'm giving you a possible scenario and why we shouldn't go down this route of giving the Red Cross the mandate of delivering on fundamental constitutional duties of the government. So let's say we have a scenario where there's a terrorist attack and we bring in the Red Cross. We haven't vetted who is in the Red Cross. We're giving them sensitive information. Maybe we have one of these terrorist cells, an individual who's embedded themselves into the Red Cross because they know how penetratable they are. It's a slippery slope, I keep saying. You cannot outsource fundamental functions of the government, not constitutional ones.
When you talk about, say, a situation, a make-believe situation where terrorists have embedded
It's not
themselves
make-believe.
into, say, the Red Cross, what do you say to a situation where within our government we already have terrorists? When you have state officials being accused of diverting hundreds of billions of shillings that were intended for projects that are supposed to help people, and by so doing they create disasters that are man-made of phenomenal proportions. Those are terrorists. They are within the government and we've been paying them. And the net result is terrorism. When you have a situation, when you talk about corruption, which we do on a daily basis, the net result of these corrupt activities ends up being worse than even the terrorism that we speak of. Terrorism, the face of terrorism we fear is things exploding, body parts flying all over the landscape. But the activities that these individuals are involved in kill more people. That's why I refer to it as genocide and a crime against humanity. Because what they mete out as a result of these things that they do are unspeakable.
I agree with you in broadening the definition of terrorism as we know it, but given the situation we're dealing with right now is the idea of disaster management.
The terrorism by these people is what's bringing this discussion in. Because if people within government who are mandated to do what they're supposed to do actually did it, as opposed to giving us a long history of never doing it, this discussion would never even take place.
I agree there are gaps in government, but the solution is not to
Gaping,
bring in
big, massive gaps.
Absolutely, and that's down
Gorgeous.
to our leadership,
And
which
at,
is
at
where
the same time, we're not talking about giving them the sole mandate. Like we're saying, and I keep repeating, they will be answerable to somebody in government. Give an example of, you said, we have PPPs, we have build, operate and transfer leases being signed all over. The Kenya Railways is still in charge of the SGR, despite the Chinese company being the one that's operating it. Right?
But there's some functions that are just too sensitive. When it comes to things like internal security, we cannot be outsourcing it to the
We're not
For how long?
outsourcing
How long
internal
will
security.
how long do we then continue to sacrifice the safety and security of the population on the altar of mediocrity by government? When we look at what the scenario is right now, how it has been for time immemorial, whereby we have had these disasters and it's just not up to scratch. When we're talking about life, we're not talking about we're talking about life.
What about in terms of accountability by the Red Cross? Would they then be subject to the laws that, for instance, I've said earlier, procurement laws, but even appointment laws where they'd have to go through vetting and so on? Would they fall into that for the sake of transparency and accountability?
But are these not the sort of things that would form the basis of a discussion when you want to
That is
engage
the
them?
discussion I want to have, and I want to show you the absurdity that this would lead to. Because what would happen, it would eventually become a government body, and if we claim a full government body, because it would fall under these laws, and if we claim that our government is failing, then we would just turn Red Cross into a failed government
No.
agency.
If
When-
you follow
when-
a certain path that you seem to be prescribing, yes, we would. I asked earlier on, is there a framework that can be used? Because we already know the disasters. We know we have examples of other countries that have followed this. We know the problems they've gotten themselves into. But taking all these things into account, is it then not possible to have a legal framework that would enable the best to come out of
I think it
it?
does.
Absolutely, and what I've highlighted is the potential pitfalls. Are we willing to face
I
those?
think it does. There's already, this body is recognized under law because it's actually a creation of Kenyan law. It falls under very many issues where there's issues of accountability, issues of being responsive to the government. It's just like, yes, we have a body like, let's say, the Law Society of Kenya is created under statute, right? Yes, it's independent. Yes, but then the law comes in, and the
But
law
it is
has
also subject to a lot of our regulations. So the Law
Exactly.
Society would use the IABC in their
Exactly.
in their
and the
elections
same
and so
thing, the
on.
Kenya Red Cross is also subject to a lot of our laws. And if you amended this to just a little bit, just tweak it to answer some of the queries that may arise, that how then shall we ensure that it remains, autonomous, but at the same time answerable to the people. If we are giving it money, then we also need to have an auditor general
Accountability.
having access to it, so that we have accountability. We can answer these things in law, but principally what we are saying is do not duplicate roles. Stop duplicating roles by creating another body to do what this body is doing, and you're already working with this body.
This body is an independent body and gets international funding. That's very dangerous. It's a channel through which international or foreigners can actually start to tamper with our policies.
Jerry, our government receives foreign aid every other day.
Absolutely, and
And
you've
it's
seen
very
what it's
dangerous.
done to us
Even
with
as we
structural
speak-
readjustment programs and things like that.
Yes.
We have seen what aid has done to us, what loans have done to us.
We have seen what people who are mandated to manage our loans have taken us to. That's what we've seen.
It's the mismanagement of what has come. It's not that the intention of all the other governments that are funding us.
Or malicious. There
Or
were no
malicious.
malicious intention.
In the education sector, like you said, the free primary education was hugely funded
Funded by the British.
By the British, right? USAID funds a lot of projects in this country.
Yes.
If you look at health, you're telling us HIV is almost 100%
80% funded by it was.
Right.
Well, now the funding
Okay.
has gone down.
And
Yes.
this aid has helped us how? Where has it gotten us to?
In terms of
Well, we haven't managed to get ourselves out of the quagmire. We're still having to rely on them. So what you're saying is, let's continue. Let's extend
No.
that reliance.
What
and
we're saying
extend
was
that
that-
reliance
No.
into.
No, that's what you're saying. What we're saying is the problem was so vast that given even what has been achieved, the fact that help is needed, it isn't as though the same amount of help is required. But the problem was beyond us. That was the fact. And even with the assistance, we are still seeing that it is still in many ways beyond us, and we still need some assistance. That's what we're saying. Our systems simply were not able to. It's not that it created dependency. Even in the absence of that assistance, essentially what would have happened is, remember you're talking about a situation where some parts of the country, the prevalence rate of HIV, for instance, something like that at 38, some was 40%. What that means is every other person you see was likely to be HIV positive.
Yep.
You don't intervene in that aggressively as was possible by the funding. You'd have an entire community just dying off. It's not difficult to see what would happen. Yes.
I think we also need to divorce ourselves from the situation that we say, because here we are, we say because the government is mandated to do this particular job, because it is their function, because it is a state, because it is a national function, it has not been done. We need to look at it through different eyes and say that it has not helped us, it has not worked up until now. What do we need to do to get us out of this? Because it's a mess. It is a mess. We cannot be in a constant place of coming up with commissions and creating reports when something happens. We have to get out of that status of being reactive when things occur. We have to have things in place that we basically need to look towards now, permanent solutions to problems that will pop up. They will come. We already know that they will come. We know that these disasters will take place. By virtue of us being here and being human, these things will happen. So we need to get out of that place where we say because the government is responsible for carrying out this particular function, and even if they're not really doing it as they should, it's their function.
No,
So let's leave it to them.
you don't
We can
do
improve
the,
on things. If
I
it's not
did-
working,
I did jump on Jerry's neck a while back when she brought in the issue of electing right leaders. But once again, this is really, really, really blowing into our already overblown trumpet. But here goes. The electing leaders does come in because this thing of the government, yes, but not all government ministries.
Individuals.
Yes. The dysfunctionality of these ministries differ. There are ministries where things actually seem to work, okay? But there are some which are a complete disaster at any given time, no matter how you... Up until this scandal the other day, we held our treasury in fairly high esteem. At least I did. I felt these people know what they're doing. Then this thing comes up and you wonder, oh God, what on earth? So at some point, we should distinguish and stop talking government and say specifically leaders, these individuals. Because one of the things that ministries do have the power to do, they do have the power to bring in what I may refer to as private contractors, they're allowed to bring in partners. They're called partners. But they're private to help them with what
To
they
help
do.
them.
They're allowed to do that. And we've had these associations from the time of independence, and they have worked. And a lot of the things that we say we've been able to do has been because of this.
If we look at this particular ministry, which is tasked with the security of this country, and we say, if we're looking at specifically disaster management, the disasters that have occurred in this country over what, 20 years, 15 years, we've had different individuals at the helm, have we not? Different individuals.
Yes,
It's not
we
been
have.
the same individual.
In-
Let's take a 20-year period.
Yes.
Different individuals. Has
Even
the
different presidents.
Has the situation been
Look.
different? Has it changed? Has it gotten better, worse? Or have we maintained
And
the
let me give you
status
an
quo?
example.
Has it
And-
changed?
and over
Because we
the
talk
same
about it
period.
I
being
actually want to give
individuals
you
and the
an
leaders
example
in which we are
of
putting into
leadership,
place.
okay?
Has it been different individuals or the same? It's not been one individual. It's been different individuals.
The conversation this morning has been on disaster management and response, where we're discussing should the government just choose or elect or appoint the Kenya Red Cross as the sole disaster response and management agency for the government. Fund it, let it run it, instead of directing money to set up new agencies that will take too long to get to the capacity, the full capacity that the Kenya Red Cross has already. And we've seen the Kenya Red Cross on the ground. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 7:30. On the other side of this break, we take a different look at a new conversation. And this one is about the church and state.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
Muthaiga service lane inbound is gridlocked. Pangani underpass towards the CBD is equally messy. Avoid it like a plague if you can. All right, Mombasa Road near the steel plant was looking like a mess a short while ago. Security checks at Parklands Baptist are causing traffic that's spilling onto Ring Road Westlands. We understand that safety is important, but so is our time, say drivers. All right, looking at Thika Road, again, we're looking at a spillover from Kiambu Road causing some traffic getting towards Allsops area. Kiambu Road, however, is moving very, very smoothly. Langata Road, Ngong Road, and Wayaki Way not looking so bad as you're entering into the CBD. Is what is expected with traffic bumper to bumper. However, it's moving. So that's a good thing. If you see anything different or you find an alternative route that anyone else can use, give us a call. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Jerry Thorne, CT Muga, Ndu Oko, and Americ Latif. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, in Eldoret, we are on 96.6, 96.7, beg your pardon, 90.9 in Nyeri, and 97.6 in Malindi. Now, with the advent of devolution, we also saw the proliferation of many public universities. So every new county wants to come up with its own public university. And this is the conversation that City Muga wants to take us into, right?
Actually, I'm actually saying that the intentions were perfect and excellent in proliferating the number of universities in the country, open up space for higher learning. But in taking those 2 steps forward, we in reality took something around 20 steps backwards. That's what I'm saying. Now, you know, we've talked about value systems in this country. We've talked about value systems in this particular show. But what is of interest is that the one thing we've never been able to do well is encapsulate it in a way that it actually represents the way Kenyans think, the way Kenyans see things. The Germans, for instance, who are renowned to be technological giants, have a word for it. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Okay? I'm just going to spell it, and then you can figure out how it's pronounced. It's WELTANSCHAWUUNG. Now, what?
Welterstung.
See? People, it is, yes.
There was a W you've missed out there.
Yes. It's a framework. It's like a mental framework from which people actually want to do things. And this is at the heart of the way they built the education system, meaning working with an education system and incorporating it into the corporate and industrial life. Every function of that particular community, the education is supposed to fit in. Now, it's what has made them what they are. And it's what has made some of their education, like the technical, what they call applied sciences, so vibrant because it fits in. It's not just going to class. At every stage, you have to be placed in the workplace where whatever it is you're learning is practicalized. The Chinese have an interesting way of looking at it. And there's a saying, they say, in a broken nest, there are no whole eggs. Now, we keep talking about the disaster that Kenya is and the problems that we have. We could argue that the nest called Kenya is broken. Now, one of our most prolific writers on this continent, a gentleman by the name of Chinua Achebe, put it so very, very beautifully. Center doesn't hold. He said things have fallen apart. That is what best describes our education system. It has fallen apart.
Same outlook every day.
At what
City.
level are you talking about?
University.
Right.
Let me give you an example
Tertiary
of what
education.
I mean. Okay? To say that the country has moved backwards, it's like saying, look, are you saying nothing has happened? I'm saying akin to it. In the 1970s, again, this is history, something happened in this country that didn't seem that important. The Swiss government came in, not Kenyan, Swiss government came in and helped us build something that we know as the Utalii College. Now, prior to that, if you went to any hotel in this country, they were manned by Europeans. Manager, assistant manager, all the top positions. The Africans were left to the mundane things of doing the activities that required physical labor, like washing, cleaning, carrying, things like that, important things like that. But anyone who was born at a time when all you found were African managers, you assume that's the norm. It wasn't.
No.
What changed it was that simple thing, that college. It changed that particular service industry in this entire region because nobody else had it. So people in this entire region brought their people to be trained in that facility. Then we had something called the Polytechnic, and then we had village polytechnics. Now, the polytechnics followed the same model that I speak of. I'm using Germany as an example. I'm not saying they're the only ones who have it. But people who went to the Polytechnic were guaranteed that at every stage of your learning, you had some very practical experience. The net result of this was you were user-friendly. So employers would seek people who had actually studied at the Polytechnic. Now, what countries that we refer to as developed have used university education for is to propel their development agenda. So they ensure that what they call applied sciences whether it is in health, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in industry, whether it's in any area of development, even if it's in commerce, it has a direct link to the world in which that training is intended for. And people have, whether it's indentureship, whether it's attachment but there's a direct affiliation, so you get real life experience. And what is even more interesting, you get absorbed. So you actually trained when you know very well you will get a job. People have taken it further. When you talk of mass tourism in Kenya, people assume that you're talking about wealthy people who have money who keep coming in. No, they're not. Some of these are people who are either taxi drivers or they're welders or they're masons, people who do menial work.
They've saved.
Yes, but that work pays well in the countries they come from because these people are also well trained.
Yes.
I am saying we had a system such as this one that guaranteed that we had people who from secondary school would branch off into areas that were practical such as this one. Those who preferred theory and academia would go into academia. It died. That died. We had a Kenya Technical Teachers Training College. We still have it actually. People don't even know it existed. There's a generation who don't even know it exists. This was funded by the Canadians. A beautiful college that taught the very thing I'm saying. We had Kenya Science. It's part of the University of Nairobi right now. When you have a situation where you grow universities that focus on academia, but you don't focus on applied sciences, then you have a problem. Now, to compound this problem, forgive me, problems, the German government came up with a suggestion. And they wanted to create what they call the East African University of Applied Sciences. Now, why this becomes important is recently, yesterday, we had it in the papers, the Chinese government were doing something similar. They were introducing a concept where they wanted to train people in the very applied sciences that the Germans had offered to build a university for in the country. Offered to build a university for. To understand just how damning this thing is, I want to quote what a certain gentleman by the name of Joe Sang, who was the CEO of the Kenya Pipeline, had to say with regards to what it is that we face. In building the pipeline, he said that in Kenya is still importing pipeline and water engineers from Nigeria, South Africa, Lebanon, and China to build our own pipeline. Indeed, lack of requisite skills has forced them in the oil and gas sector to remain a major challenge, because that's what it is. So what they did was they put up a center of excellence called the Morendat Center of Excellence in this country. Now, when you find parastatals, government agencies putting up colleges, it means our institutions of higher learning
Are not meeting these needs.
Yes, that is why I said that we have actually moved backwards, not forwards. Now, this university that I spoke of was supposed to cover all these things. Remember, fully funded. They were building us a university from scratch. What we need to do was provide land. Government officials went to Germany, discussions were had, the Germans came here, there was conversation back and forth. We still do not have a university.
Was land identified?
Yep, an issue arose. Why here? Why not elsewhere?
It's where it's going to be located.
Yeah, and an offer. This is the German government together with corporate support from Germany, people who would ensure that the practicality of these things.
Of applied sciences.
You know, when you talk about these things as I do, it may sound a little too theoretical, all right? But let me give you an example. Say, for instance, the health sector, okay? WHO standards tell us that what we actually need, given our population of, say, around 45 million to 50 million, we need something like around 60,000 hospital beds. Currently, what we have is 1.4 beds for every 1,000 individuals. Yes.
How many does the WHO recommend per person, per 1,000? Or
what we require for our population is actually 60,000.
60,000
hospital beds.
Yes, to cater for our population.
And how many do you have in total?
For every 1,000 individuals, you have 1.4 beds.
Right.
That's the allocation we currently have. Now, if we train people in the biomedical field, for instance, right, this issue that we had of leasing equipment that we didn't know what to do with, we would
have people who would be able to run.
Yes, Eric,
operate the
you
equipment.
have got it. We train.
Do we have that?
Yes, we train them, but they are only 100 every year, whereas we need 600 to 1,000.
And this is done by KMTC?
Yes.
Kenya Medical Training College.
Yes.
Why?
Because our focus has moved to academia, I think. Because
Since we're talking university and we're talking of disaster management, This is disaster management.
This is
When-
one of
yes,
one of the
when,
cases.
when you look at, because this is the health field, you do need individuals who are trained to be able to cater for the needs of the country in this field.
Yes.
So you plan for it. How you plan for it? You make sure the institutions train these people.
You know, City, there's a university, the Egerton University.
Yeah.
It was known
Known.
for training people in agriculture. So it basically had, the main thing that you get out of Egerton University was agriculture. I'm looking at the kind of programs that it offers now. So yes, it has a lot of agriculture, animal health, animal science and technology. It has all that. BSc in agriculture, in natural resource management. And then you also have things like
They have everything else. Law, commerce. They have all that.
literature, security management.
Yes, they do.
You've got Master of Science Education. That could apply. In linguistics, you have linguistics at Egerton University. You've got other courses that have basically come into Egerton University. Journalism and mass communication in Egerton University. You've got BA in Egerton.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
CT, I get the impression what you're suggesting is maybe a configuration where government every maybe 5 years comes up with its future plans, and within that they're able to decipher or decide what skills they need, and as a result what courses they should be pushing at university. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
So that our guys
Actually, in
are
this
manufactured for a development agenda in terms of
we
academic.
do have those plans. The one thing this country has never lacked.
It's plans.
Planning.
No, that we don't lack.
Okay, so you suggest we implement that.
Yes, you see, we have one of these unique economic situations, once again, that we are not, I'm going to be polite now, we are not exploiting fully. Okay? It's called the demand for education. Kenyans want to be educated. This thing was brought to the fore not very long ago when there were policemen who were complaining that they had gotten their degrees, but their salaries were not commensurate with their... And they even complained further and said their colleagues in the AP, Administration Police, had had their salaries adjusted. When this story developed, it was clear many of these people had actually taken loans of up to 500,000 shillings to
Advance
Yes.
their education.
People value. So there's a demand. There's no question about it. Now, when there's a demand for it, what you do is you supply, isn't it? Now, I am saying we've supplied the wrong...
Courses.
Yes, we've oversupplied the wrong courses.
But if these courses are being subscribed to, if the fact that they exist means they're being subscribed to, shouldn't
No,
we
they're
let
not being
people go with
subscribed
their
to.
choice?
No. These courses are made available, so that's what people can choose.
It's the thing.
They're not even emphasized.
It's what's being offered.
Yes,
They're just offering.
they're
them.
offered.
But
So
I
they're
don't think
limiting the
offering,
options.
Yes,
the
they
offering
are.
is not coming from information that is coming from the market per se.
No.
The offering is coming from the decisions that are made within a particular institution and say this is the course
This is what we
that
offer.
we're going to put on offer. You come, you apply, you take it or you leave it. This is what we're offering. It's not an informed offering.
Parallel learning in education was actually also demand driven. People who were in the working environment and wanted to further their education but could not go to regular classes. And many of them wanted to do courses like commerce, things in the commerce field,
Business
law, things
administration.
like that. So it was demand driven and these courses were created for the parallel and then it grew. I am saying, if you consider just the demand that Kenyans have for higher education and the extent parents go to ensure children get this education, it tells you that it is a field that not only would help propel the government where it wants to go. You don't have to pull people to do this. They already want to learn. They're already willing to spend money. Just a question of directing what the country needs in a proper way. We more or less demonize these applied sciences in this country. Things that require physical labor. That's what we look at, but it doesn't. Technical fields require scientifically based thinking. It is the people think that you're Kali artisan. By the time someone takes a piece of metal and does something with it so that it becomes a cooking utensil, do you know the amount of science that goes into that? It's not just a hammer and tongue situation where you just club something until it forms the shape you want. No. We stopped focusing in this aspect of our education.
Do you find maybe these courses aren't as glamorous as perhaps the others?
They are made not to be glamorous. Not that they're not
It's how
glamorous.
they're packaged.
They are not made to be glamorous. Like, for instance, why is ICT the biggest cause that everybody wants to talk of.
And communication now.
Because a lot of attention has been driven in its direction.
And there's a lot of money attached
And
to
there's
it.
a lot of
All you
funding
need to do
attached
is
to
talk
it.
Safaricom and you finish that story.
No, all you need to do is say the
Yes.
word right now. All you need to do, for example,
Say
is say the
M-Pesa.
word coding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just say coding. And
Yes.
you
And
have
that's
all
it.
sort, and that's it. Just say coding. And the kind of money that has been thrown in that direction is actually, it's huge.
You know, this tightening of the academic sector and the corporate and the industrial, countries that have developed did this. They tightened it. So essentially what they do is practical. Even if you study law, if you look at the branches of law that they go into, those are need driven.
Yes.
And it's interesting because if you look on the other side of the hemisphere, just like you had said before, we ran into a gentleman and he said, okay, well, he seems to have been doing pretty well for himself. And we're not just talking about the money of it. And so he was asked, what is it that you do? And he said, I'm a painter. And so, of course, you know, the thought immediately was, oh, okay, painter, you paint pieces and you sell them on, you know, auction for great. No, he said, no, a painter. Paint the walls in the house, literally. But you see, here we are looking at a gentleman who went through, you know, some kind of technical course, and he actually did go to school. Maybe he did one of the applied sciences that you're talking about, masonry, etc., and then was able to learn a technique that he was then able to practice over time. Now, those courses are given attention because they're brought into the workplace later on, and they're given a significance in terms of how, you know, a particular sector is able to develop. And this gentleman has been able to make a living off of this. He has been trained to do it well. Not that you would do it and then you call somebody else to have it done as a repeat job. He's able to do it well and has been able to make a living from this. And he actually enjoys it. Looking at him speak of his profession, looking at him speak of the jobs that he has done previously, he talks about it with pride because he has been able to apply his learning to a real life situation that has then been able to affect his life positively in terms of what he's been able to buy, in terms of whom he's been able to support, and a lifestyle that he has been able to maintain, which is essentially what we should be looking to. An education that will propel us forward in terms of development of the individual, propel us forward in terms of development of the country itself, you know, going towards the national level. So really, what are we inputting and what output are we getting? Because like you said, here we are looking, if you say I'm a painter or I'm a mason, you already put them down on a certain level. Whereas actually they are builders. These are people who put together.
And they're important.
These are not...
And not just builders in the literal term, but builders, people who would actually
you
put
live
societies
in a house
together.
which you're proud of, and you don't seem to think the person who goes about putting this thing is important.
It's important.
Yes.
It's a menial
And the reason
job.
why you engage them, because you can't do it yourself. Okay, look at another practical example. Let's say, given we were talking the other day of the opportunities that are completely wasted on our behalf by our government. Think of, say, energy technology. Energy. You tell me what would happen if people were trained in it, even at the village polytechnic level, and tell me how many units within a rural setting, if not all, would have solar panels.
True. Would be able to come up with solutions that can actually give us better and cheaper solar panels.
Whether it was water technology, which
turbines.
is taught at the village level, whether it's agricultural technology, this is education that should have been focused on where it was completely ignored.
Let's deconstruct this building industry, pun intended. Let's go into that and look at why, and look at why maybe it's not as glamorous, or what the problem is there, why people won't go and be trained properly. It's one of those jobs where you can get somebody who isn't necessarily trained to do it for you cheaper, and we're willing to cut those corners, as we've seen, to the detriment or to the extent of having people die in those circumstances. And I think as a result, the profession isn't respected, or people don't feel valued, people, builders, for instance. So maybe it's for the government to start regulating certain industries. For instance, plumbers. You have people in the UK, plumbers are very well paid. You have Oxford graduates in the UK who stopped their job in middle management and went into plumbing, paid for a course and went into plumbing. And you get a certain licensing where only, you know, a licensed person can deal with your gas, for instance. A licensed person can deal with your electricity. Now, if we could regulate these industries, electricians, builders, and so on, we could then cut out these quacks who come into the industry and make labor extremely cheap, and actually start to build and grow these industries. If we look at why people don't want to be a builder, it's very cheaply paid, isn't it?
No. Actually, it isn't.
It's one of no. We're deconstructing it, so I'm
Yes.
throwing ideas into the
It's
kitty.
one of those that is
It's-
cheaply paid at a certain level.
And
So
the
yes,
reason
look at
you
as
can be cheaply
Mjengo.
paid
Yes.
is because it's so easy to be a rogue and to be a quack in that industry. I can come and say I'm a builder.
You know why it's
So
easy
it
to
needs
be a
to
quack?
be
It's because
regulated.
we have a shortage of the professionals. If
I don't
we
think
had-
we have a shortage.
if
Do you
had-
think we have a shortage? We have a
do
shortage
have
of the
shortage
professionals.
masons. If we had more
We
and
have a
more of
serious-
them,
Also,
serious
it's not
shortage.
considered
Who would answer?
glamorous. Blue collar jobs are simply not considered glamorous. So maybe we need to pay more for them. What can we do?
No. People who are in that industry actually make money. It's not that. It's the people who work for them, the menial jobs, who are underpaid. But people, don't mistake it. There's money in the industry.
Who are we talking about? A mason, a stonemason, a builder? Who exactly are we talking about? The contractor?
Anyone who does the menial work is the one who is lowly paid. People and that industry, you may not know this, but everything you spoke of, they have them. The licensure, all that is there. They have all those. But Eric has gotten the heart of the matter. There's a shortage. When you have institutions that train these people, remember, the institutions become part and parcel of regulating the industry.
yes.
We don't have enough of those institutions. So a lot of the people you have working apprentices, they learnt on the job.
So there's a shortage because
a
people
There
are
is a
going into
serious
other.
shortage.
People are studying other courses that
Also
are
because
considered
it's
more
not being
glamorous.
offered. It's not being offered
It's
in
not
many
being offered
places.
in
If you
many
look at the
places.
institutions that we
Right.
have, how many of them are actually offering these courses that do with them?
But is it not offering them? I mean, surely some of these institutions are businesses. Is it not offering them because there is no demand for them? So there's no need to supply it. Do you
There is-
understand? People want to go into more glamorous white collar jobs. You want to be a lawyer, an accountant, teacher, that sort of thing, engineer. Do you see what I mean? If you've reached a certain level of
Julie,
education,
why did you
that's
pause
what
at
you're
teacher?
pushed. And I noticed that
Because she did not know how she
No,
was
no,
going to
how
join
did you
teacher
pause?
and
Why?
glam.
That's mid glam.
Mid glam. She didn't know how she was going to join the two. Teacher
Without
and
being
glam.
prejudiced or throwing any of my biases out there, it's mid glam in that your parents push you, especially in our culture as Kenyans and the slightly older generations. They're not going to tell you go out there and be a yoga practitioner, for instance. You know, that's new age thinking. So what parents were doing is pushing you into lawyer,
into law, into
lawyer,
medicine.
True.
engineer, accountant, doctor, and so
true,
on.
true.
So that was viewed as glamorous. And if you're finishing Form 4, you're going to push into some of those careers. You're not going to say, well, I'm going to become a stonemason. So I think the universities aren't providing some of these courses because there
There's
is
no
no
demand
demand
for
for it.
Also, it could be that there's no understanding of what really is the
These-
market,
these-
of what really is the
Allow
market
me
demand.
to explain something which I probably didn't bring out clearly. The polytechnics were not intended to teach. They didn't purpose them for academic subjects. There were academic subjects that form the basis of the technical knowledge you're supposed to acquire. You learn some chemistry, physics, and what have you. But they focused on the applied sciences.
And the acquisition of the skill.
The
It was skill acquisition.
focused. These other courses would be there. They'd do like secretarial work was available. You could do administrative work. The courses. But if you look at the courses, they had a direct link to these applied sciences because you need administrators. You do need people to help whatever it is industry function. They had them, but the focus. This university that I was speaking about, it focus, applied.
Just
We killed them. Look, why didn't we simply just convert some of those institutions that we've grown like these ones? China is planning to do precisely that. They have more universities than they know what to do with.
And they're converting.
They're
all of them.
converting them into applied science universities.
Can you expound, maybe for myself and some of our listeners, what do you mean by applied sciences? Because I thought of
Alright.
it could be theoretical, so like
No.
applied maths.
Okay.
It's
For
like,
instance,
is it like
Eric?
skill?
yes.
So it's like going
Skill-based,
to Kenya
practical.
It
Polytechnic.
is learning, but that learning is juxtaposed with multiple and regular practical field work.
Like going to Kenya
Okay.
Polytechnic to study,
So-
for example, engineering, right? And what you're coming out to do is motor vehicle engineering.
Automotive
It's
engineering.
automotive
Specifically.
engineering.
Yes.
It's
So as
specific
opposed to
you-
learning about forces and fields, magnetic
Yes.
fields,
You
the
will
theoretical.
learn.
You will learn
learn. There's a theoretical aspect. You will always will have the theory.
But the emphasis will be on the practical component.
Yes,
The
how
skill
cars
that you
function,
get.
what you can do specifically.
That's where you had things occurring like draftsmanship, where somebody was actually going into. You're really looking at the nitty gritty of the operations of this particular sector. So you have things like draftsmanship, you have
Yep.
things like masonry, you have things like, even at some point when you look at the applied science, you go down to the nitty gritty of cooking. and things like that. So it was looking at the practicality of some of these sectors.
And were they
getting
expensive, these polytechnics?
No,
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 polytechnics are not
and-
expensive.
and you know what is
actually serving a
interesting?
purpose. Let me give the phone line so we can open the phone line. 0719 012 600. We'd like you to participate in this conversation. That's 0719 012 600. This is the Situation Room. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it up.
Spice up your life.
People have been on Riara Road and moved 500 meters in 1 hour and are still stuck on Riara Road. Must understand that because there's construction going on Gong Road, Riara Road is being used as a feeder road, and so we have traffic going in both directions. That is what is going on there. All right, getting into the CBD coming from Wayaki Way is not so much of a problem today because remember Route 87 was opened and so the traffic flows much smoother. All right, Limuru Road towards town is slow today from Muthaiga and it's just probably a Wednesday situation, but it'll get better as you go along. All right, getting into the CBD also coming through Langata Road and joining at the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. We have everybody coming through the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, and so that's why we have issues coming into the city centre. But as we go towards the hours of 9 o'clock in the next 1 hour, we should just be fine. Send us a message or give us a call. The number is 0719 012 600.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way
At
to
2
start
minutes
your
past 8
day.
o'clock, this is the only way to start your day. Hashtag the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE, on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. And we are, of course, on terrestrial, on radio across the country, 97.6 in Malindi. We are in Nyeri on 90.9. We are in Eldoret on 96.7. In Nakuru, 96.0. In Kisumu, 102.5. In Mombasa, 87.9. In Nairobi, 94.4. This morning, our literal thinker, C.T. Muga, is telling us about what we've done with the universities. Basically, taken a couple of steps, thinking we're taking a couple of steps forward, but we've taken very many steps backwards.
Eric, I thank you for being a forward-looking man who's even prophetic in his utterances. Thank you. Yes, I am a lateral thinker. But what appeared in the papers recently was actually, should we say, not the word we say is innovative, but the people pronounce it as innovative, but it's innovative. The Chinese were using a very interesting approach that, well, it's novel for if you're thinking about it now, but it was always there. It was something that was catered for by what we call village polytechnics. They want to train trainers. And they want master trainers, meaning they want to cascade the process of training in this very thing that we're talking about so that people can train individuals to the level of the most basic structure within a community so that the knowledge is actually passed down. But what is interesting, their training involves attaching people to institutions in their country so that they can actually see how this thing is done.
It's done.
They haven't just taken it. The applied science they've taken, believe me, they've taken it to the level of even shipping. You know, we do have a maritime institute in this country. Now, what I'd like to know is how far that maritime institute has helped people who work within water bodies, the lakes that we have, the rivers that we have, because there is knowledge, there is technological knowledge that you need to apply if you are to make those particular bodies economically viable, because they actually are economically viable. The question that we were looking at even before we went into all this, we're asking, Jerry asked, deconstruct this thing. Okay, let me try and deconstruct it. What village polytechnics offered were not anything different from what the polytechnics offered. What they did was the courses were just shorter. These are the places where what you call field workers or field extension workers were trained.
And it
Did
was
they get degrees?
targeted courses?
You could work to a degree, but they started you over the level that you are at.
Oh, the certificate, kind of.
Yes, the
Yes.
glamour that you speak of, many of these courses, you didn't need a high entry point. Like if you, after all your struggles, you managed to get a D, you wouldn't just go into oblivion.
So we absorbed everybody, regardless
Thank you.
of your performance.
Yes, you did. So, and you could start with a certificate course and then move on
Yeah,
to
you
a higher-
go increasing you.
increasing up to a diploma level. Then you'd be told what to do to get to a higher diploma.
However,
and then to a
because
yes.
but
Let me
because of
open
the
up the
fact that
phone
it was
lines.
targeted
The phone
at
lines.
whatever. Oh, right.
Pause. Phone line.
0719 012 600. Good morning, Weber. Hello.
Morning.
Morning. How are you?
Very fine.
Yes. What do you think of what CT is saying this morning?
If the government wants the best for this country and for the future of our generation, I think the best thing we could do is to invest in the technical skills. Because right now we've got a lot of graduates and undergraduates, and they don't have the skills. So I will advise, or I will go for maybe those people who have got the degrees and they don't have the jobs, they get enrolled for these technical skills like the agriculture, the mechanic, and the stuff. Because right now our country is lagging behind because of such kind of things. We don't have enough mechanics and the cars all over Narabika and the stuff. Also the agriculture, if we invest in agriculture, if these undergraduates and the graduates invest in agriculture, I hope we shall be taking this country to a different level, which we shall not be crying of the poverty, living below the standard lines and the stuff.
Okay.
More so the agriculture. That's
Why do you
my area of-
think? Why do you think people weren't going into these programs? People weren't going to study mechanics, as you're talking about, or in terms of the engineering aspect, as a mechanical engineer or car engineer, or agriculture. Why do you think people weren't going into that? Mm-hmm.
According to my perspective, is people fear this job because maybe it's because of the dirt. They don't want to get exhausted. They don't want to exhaust their mind. They want this the easy money, the white collar job. And you see, if everybody is going for the white collar, so it means down here we don't have the hands-on jobs.
Is it because they're not glamorized enough? Some of these jobs, you maybe might feel shame or doing this as opposed to a degree. Do you think there's emotional sentiments attached to what courses people are doing? So, for instance, people find agriculture old-fashioned, so young people don't look in that direction, for instance.
You see, what has influenced this is the Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll find in the Western culture, most of the people who are doing the hands-on are the Africans. That's why you'll find a lot of people getting out of this Africa and going to the other to outside countries to maybe to do the hands-on work.
Mm-hmm.
So you find people are emulating. They want to be models. They want to be teachers. They want to be nurses, and we are forgetting the basic of all, which is the mechanics, the farmers, and the stuff. So I guess it's the moral emulation. Whereby people are trying to emulate how people are living outside the Europeans, the whites are living.
Right.
So, yeah.
Weber, thank you very much for calling this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Asante for
you.
contributing. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. The phone lines are open now. You can join in the conversation. Jerry, you were actually asking a question there.
It's Ndu who was saying something.
Yeah, it's Ndu who was saying before we
Yes.
went to the caller. Yes.
Right. So Ndu was saying that, we're
Ndu.
Talk about yourself in third person.
yeah, Ndu says. At whatever level people entered into the courses that we're speaking of at the polytechnic level. So regardless of whether you came out at, certificate level, diploma level, university level, because the course had been so targeted, you were then prepared for what the market asked of you. So if you came out at a diploma level, it didn't mean that you were less talented or that you were less equipped to do the job that this particular sector asked of you. So then if you went back to the diploma after getting a certificate,
And
you
you
could
did a
actually
higher diploma.
You could actually go out and work. And because the focus was it was focused, and they made sure that you came out equipped with what you needed to actually go and then apply what it is that you learned in a real life situation. Should you have felt that you wanted to then go back and get the diploma, you could then go back and more knowledge was conferred upon you. If you then wanted to go back and go to the degree level, again, more knowledge was conferred upon you. So I think at the same time, what we are looking at is that because even at the point where these decisions are being made at the university level, for example, the tertiary level, they're not taking into consideration what actually the market is demanding. Because if the market demands are being taken into consideration, then we would have these courses still on offer with the same vigor that it was being considered 10, 20, 15, 50 years ago.
You know why I said we moved back was, you see, all these things were taken into consideration.
Then.
Yeah, I mean, some of these courses just sort of like vanished.
They morphed into something else. They morphed into something else.
The government had there was something called government trade tests. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And this was how, if say for instance you're a fitter mechanic, as in you're a, what you call a spanner boy, you could upgrade your knowledge by going academic, and that's what you did.
Exactly.
Grade test 1, 2, and so you actually backed whatever skills you had with academic knowledge.
Yes.
What sort of salary are you looking at? So you've come out with this diploma, just so I can understand the demographic and just contextualize this inside me. So you come out of one of these courses and you get a job, a decent job. What sort of starting salary would you be looking at?
What job?
So this
which
one
course?
of your polytechnics, you've come out having studied. It's a 2-year course, perhaps, or 1-year course.
Depends on what you're studying. Whether
Okay,
it's a
let's
certificate
take a
course,
classic
diploma.
example so that we can visualize what you're
Diploma.
saying. So you study a diploma. That takes what, a year?
No, 2 years.
2 years.
It takes 2 years.
3 years actually for diplomas. Many diplomas.
It's 3 years.
Now. Okay, 3.
3 years, and you come out with a practical set of skills in, say, what?
Let's go into the medical field. The guys who are going to manage this equipment. So
Okay, biomedical.
Biomedical engineering. You have a diploma in biomedical engineering. What is likely to be your starting salary?
It's a government scale. I do not know the government scale is.
No, roughly. Let's a ballpark figure, just so that we can visualize
I
and we
would
can
say
start to see
50,000
where.
No, not 50,000. 50 is more. It's around 35,000 shillings.
So you would start on 35,000 shillings.
Yes.
Okay. How much would this diploma have cost you?
Studying for the 3 years at 100,000 shillings a year. Probably
Okay,
300,000 shillings.
300,000. Okay. So within a year, you'd make back your investment. And 35,000, is that considered middle income?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, in Kenya. it is.
Okay. So why is it that we're not going into these skills? You're saying it's because they're not being provided. I am suggesting it's
no.
because societal
Also the
attitudes don't view this as successful. If you finished educating your child, the idea of a degree, it's so glamorized. This is what you're aspiring to. You're not looking to get your child into a higher diploma whereby they'll acquire a skill that will ensure them a job. You're not associating the two. You're seeing a degree as something that will give them a better life, because
Have
for
you
the
asked-
longest,
have you asked
degrees
why?
have been associated with success.
it's also
I think
moved
at the
into
same
the
time,
it's
job
our
market.
attitudes.
I
Even
think
the
that-
job market.
I think
Many
also-
employers nowadays are asking for minimum university degree. So you're saying, yes, you want to employ somebody, let's say
Employers in what field? I doubt.
Every.
in every field.
Literally every field, they'll say a minimum
No,
minimum
is
requirement
a
is a degree.
I
Minimum.
think there is not a full understanding or an acceptance of what the job market actually is requiring. If you just look at real estate, for
Who,
example,
the understanding from
by the
whom do I know?
institutions who are offering these courses, if they were to take into consideration what the job market actually looked like, or if they look at the landscape of the country right now, for example, if you look at real estate and the boom that they say the bubble will burst in, however, it has been bursting for the last 10 years. However, there's still demand, huge demand for people at that level with the expertise to expedite some of these projects that are happening in the real estate sector alone.
But they do.
Who does what?
They do. The universities have actually, if you look at the University of Nairobi, look, they even have new courses that have to do with construction. They never had them before. They only had architecture and they actually have courses in construction.
Only
So if
thing is
that's-
that
so
that
what's
it's
the
not
problem then, if
applied-
that's
it's
what
not
you're
applied science, it's
Yes,
academic.
yes, exactly. It's academic.
So we're saying the same thing. It's not. They're not introducing the applied sciences, and that is
They
what.
don't have the capacity to, because they haven't created that capacity.
But this is what I'm saying. That is what we need, and
But
so
they-
they've not taken that into consideration. Because if you have taken it into consideration, you will not continue to introduce these courses that are actually not needed,
But
or
also-
that actually
No.
are not
But
being
also
taken into
people-
consideration.
people-
If that is
people-
the if
people
that
are
is
looking for those
if
programs.
that is
If
the
you
ca-
introduce a program and then you see the people who are coming to apply for those programs is not as high as the people who are applying for a different program, you start discontinuing that program. Also, where is that coming from? I think it's coming from the job market. Many organizations are saying we want you to have a university degree as a minimum entry point. If you're saying that university degree as a minimum entry point, whatever level, you're a development company, you're a real estate development company. So you're seeking entry level to be degree at certain areas. You're a media house. You're seeking entry level to be degree in all spheres. You are going to have universities actually now coming up with degrees because people are seeking degrees.
They do ask for diplomas. I know, for instance, when you're asking for community workers, they will say a minimum of a diploma. Experience, then the usually impossible experience that you're supposed to have, and which you can't have unless you're employed or unless you volunteer. But no, there's a point you're trying to make and we cut you short. What were you saying?
Oh, I think that's kind of flown out the window now, because what I was trying to say at that point is that if you are looking at what really matters in the job market, because we're saying that these applied sciences are not being taken in consideration, they're not being offered. And I don't think due diligence is being done to say this is what the heartbeat of the market actually is. And if we are coming and we take the initiative to put these things on offer, guess what? There will be a connect. There will be a connect between what the heartbeat of the market is and what then people are going to school to actually learn. If due diligence is being done, and if you look at it, some of the private universities, some of the private institutions that we have are actually taking such things into consideration. The coding that we've talked about recently, the animation that we've talked about, because you see that that is where the market is going, then you start to offer courses in that because you know that that is where the demand is, not just because at the demand of the market, not the demand of the individuals who want to go and take on these courses. Yes, because they need to be trained in those particular areas.
Are they doing this? Are they offering this from at the point of acquiring skill or at the point of acquiring academic papers?
This is what I
Actually,
am.
there's a third aspect to it. Remember, when you had parallel learning, the universities realized there was money to be made in parallel education, so they opened it up. And when they opened it up, what people wanted were degrees. Families wanted degrees.
Regardless of what
Yeah,
it was about, they just
families.
wanted
It's
the
not just
degree.
even
This
the
is what I'm
students.
saying. It's
Yes.
the attitude
Yes.
towards that certification. But what we can do, I mean, who designs the curriculum within the degree? Because that's what needs to be modified.
That's what I'm saying.
As opposed to people,
The
you
two
know,
of you, could you actually say what you're saying? Instead of just telling us that's what
no,
you're
if
saying.
people want degrees, if our attitudes towards education, the epitome of education is a degree, then we can keep it that way. But what we do is modify and tweak these degrees
So that it's
so
applied.
that they actually
that it
give you some of
actually
these
is-
No,
skills.
I am saying the situation is a little more complex than that because universities wanted to make money. They realized there was money to be made and they did make money. The reason why we saw this rapid increase in universities was because they were money-making machines. It was realized you don't have to travel to Nairobi to come and get your degree. We can bring it to you
Right.
right at your doorstep.
Yep.
Well, there was also a need for it. I think it was the right thing to do.
The need was there, and everything that we're saying is there. So, to discuss it, we have to ask, which one took precedence? Because that is what led to a situation where we're simply now just churning out, not even courses, we're churning out universities.
It was clear that commercialization of it is what took precedence at that point. But now we're saying that we don't have adequate training for people in the just looking at
No,
the
we don't.
applied.
Oh, no, we
just
don't.
looking at the applied. We don't. It's not adequate.
We don't.
So
we don't,
then
we don't.
the universities have not, or the institutions across board have not taken that into consideration, and we are saying they should. That's what I'm saying. We shouldn't just say
Actually,
we shouldn't say
part of
shouldn't just say have a degree just
The
because you want to have
the
a degree.
delegations that
We
went
should
to
actually
Germany-
say have a degree with the relevant content that allows you then to enter into the market and apply it.
Actually, they have
They have. So why are
they
we not
have.
seeing the
When-
results of it
it's
if they
the same,
have?
it's the same old story of the government and the tail and all that, and then the impracticality of the government and the tail and all that. The groups of people, individuals who went to the US, apart from people within the PS and the high-ups in the education system, we had people from the university who also went. You can't have such a project without involving the universities. You have to involve them, and not just one. Because, remember, it's not that we don't have people who understand or who know or who can produce the paperwork to justify those we have. Our problem is always at the implementation stage. That's where everything gets really genuinely murky. All these things we speak of here, there are people who've thought it through and they understand it and they've even put it on paper. And that's why such things are feasible. And that's why discussions around it being brought in.
So you're saying
all
that
these things we're saying are done before someone says, okay, we'll give you the money, we'll build it for you.
So you're saying that there is a general and collective will to have individuals come out with skills in particular sectors to then come out after school and have them applied, to have them working. So there's general and collective will to have that happen. So where's the bottleneck?
See, the same culprit. you think the culprit has changed?
It's the same culprit that we see.
Culprit. Remember, we're discussing a process that evolved to where it is at now. Even teaching, remember, teaching was considered a really prestigious career. It was. And so people associate teaching with wonderful things. That particular halo disappeared and teaching acquired the most negative of reputations you could think of. And then we commercialized everything, and then the importance of your course was attached to how much money you stand to make from it. So people rushed into law. And Jerry, I'm not targeting you here, but people rushed into law, okay? And then people rushed into commerce.
And business administration.
People didn't bother with agriculture.
Yep.
They didn't. They forgot they had to eat. People didn't bother into these basic things we speak of. They didn't. Every nurse was a failed
nursing,
doctor. Somebody wanted to be a doctor but couldn't. People just didn't go into nursing as a career because they weren't told that, actually, you don't have to be a sub-doctor. A nurse, it's a career. It's nursing. It's not a subset of being a doctor. It's just...
It has its own value.
Yes, if you're a clinical officer, you're just a clinical officer. That is a career path.
It's actually a profession.
Yes.
Nursing is a profession.
We didn't. By the same token, when we talk about engineering and automotive engineering, you think of someone in a dirty overall. Not someone who solves your mechanical problems for your car. And so because of the dirty overall, you feel I shouldn't pay this person much. You forget that person has knowledge you don't have. That's why they come to help you out. And you're supposed to pay them well.
With these skills and some of the things you're talking about, is there a risk of automation coming in and actually making these jobs obsolete? So you speak of my mechanic. Today I have a diagnostic kit. So I just plug something into my car and I know what's wrong with it.
Will you fix it?
Who's going to fix it?
Yes. So you know what's wrong.
Somebody has to fix it. You know what's wrong. All you do now is sharing
When you go
knowledge.
to hospital, you know what's wrong.
You know what's wrong with
Why
you,
don't
yes.
you fix it? Because somebody, the
Somebody
technicians
has
at
been
the
trained to
Even
get it done for
automated
you.
systems, you still need you need to build them. You need to build that machine. You need
So
to service
ICT.
that machine. You still need to service it. The conversation we're having this morning is about applied sciences and what we are getting out of our universities, the proliferation of universities. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. You can call in and you can participate in this conversation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. It's 23 minutes past 8 o'clock.
Calling all homeowners present and future. It's time to live your dream in your dream home. Whether you're looking to buy or simply renovate it. From Friday 27th to Sunday 29th of September 2019 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. come on over and be part of the Owner Home Expo at KICC courtesy of the Standard Group in partnership with The Property Show. Get to interact with home developers, real estate representatives, financial advisors, as well as other private and public players in the market to help you realize your home goals. It's your window of opportunity. Your door has finally opened and entry for all will be absolutely free. Own a Home Expo.
Find a home.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Hashtag Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE, on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This is the conversation we're having. Ndu Oko, Njeri Thorn, I'm Eric Latif, and here is C.T. Muga. He's talking about our education system, what we are getting out of our universities, versus what we really need as a country to develop.
You know, the evolutionary process that we are speaking about, remember it began at a time when the country had one university. One. So to get into the university, it was there was no if but, there was the University of Nairobi. It couldn't get more prestigious. Now, the mindset that Njeri was speaking of, more or less, began its formulation process
at
then,
that point,
where the university was it, and being a graduate was something big. I'm not saying it isn't, but it was really, really big. Now, people who did other courses, it's not as though they opted. There are people who opted. Egerton existed, and what made it beautiful? Remember, it was something that was gifted to us as Kenyans by Lord Egerton himself. Not only was it a college. That thing had university status a hell of a long time ago. They had the land. They had everything to do what you required. They had a dairy. They had this. There's nothing they didn't have. You couldn't ask for. By the same token, JKU when it was began was a really practical. It was
actually a college of.
It was an applied science college. This is the point. This is the thing but it got overtaken by all these factors that that we've spoken of. You know. And when you mentioned the savings that the process that people go through in order to go for holidays, it means there is money to save. Most of our citizenry live from hand to mouth. And when someone tries very hard, when they go on holiday, they go to the rural homes. That's holiday. Now, rural homes, you all know, you go and you work. You're
not going to
You're
rest.
never really on a holiday. Okay? But with time, when we started promoting internal tourism, people at least now go to Mombasa. You'll hear someone tell you, I'm taking an SGR, I want to go to Mombasa. Now, it's a sign of a growing middle class.
Absolutely.
Yes. And some of these middle class people are the same people talk about. They are taxi drivers, they are plumbers, they are welders. Meaning, because of our quest to industrialize, the need for such technically trained people has also increased. And because of the demand, they are paid better than they were paid before. But if the focus that we're speaking of is actually given to these sort of colleges, then believe me, the industrialization process that we speak of, economically they call it the takeoff stage, we will reach it quicker than we think. Because to do it, you need trained manpower.
Let's look at the taxi driver, the mechanic who you're speaking of, and they work hard to educate their children. Do you think they will want their child? Do you think their aspirations will be to take their child to a polytechnic,
Yes.
to get a diploma, or do you think it's the degree that they'll be pursuing?
What is
their
assisting with that-
mindset?
What is
I'm looking
helping
at
with that thought
mindsets, yeah.
process is the number of people with degrees who are unemployed.
Now,
Yes.
gradually it's
Yes.
coming out. In
No,
the
no.
last 3 years,
No,
it's
it's long.
beginning.
It's longer than that.
10 more.
10,
But
because-
it hasn't
plus.
been exposed.
Oh,
It's
it
only
is.
in the last, I would say, 5 years that you're seeing this, media frenzy.
More than that.
No.
actually.
It
More
goes
than
beyond the
that.
media.
Okay,
The
maybe I
media,
wasn't
the
paying
media is
attention.
following up
Yeah.
on
Maybe
what
I
is
wasn't
the.
paying attention. So people with degrees are coming out and they don't have
It's the
jobs.
media are playing catch up on this one here. The parents and people, every other day the media will take you. The other day I saw a picture of someone in the Rift Valley who has a master's. Honors, first
the
class
taxi
honors.
driver. See?
Piki.
Border one.
Yes,
There's a border.
yes. But he's somebody who people like him. They give him business because he's
I
very
saw
good at what
that
he
too,
does.
and I thought I could have a good conversation with this guy on his motorbike. Actually,
Now, precisely. Now, that's a man who's using it. He's got the knowledge. He's figured, you know something, forget these white collar jobs. I can do something with this knowledge I have. So he's doing something that others do, but he's doing it better. Now, when this happens, India got to this stage way ahead of us, way ahead of us, where people understand the degree is just useful, but you'd better apply yourself.
Right.
Why is it that China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, why do you think those countries have led in some of these fields? Because they're trained personnel and they have institutions that train people. So when someone say wants to set up a plant, you already have trained personnel. If you want to set up an industry, we have institutions
people.
that train the personnel. That is the advantage you have, and that's how you industrialize quickly, because the manpower resource is trained to take on the process that you want to undertake.
so sort of targeted skills development.
That
or-
is
No, it's,
it.
it's focused and targeted,
So
definitely.
our
Orchestrated,
universities
so
are
to
very
speak.
commercial, though, so to speak, right now.
Absolutely
that's
so,
it.
actually.
It's completely commercial. It's not even thinking about what kind of quality that you're offering or what kind of people that you're graduating.
It's interesting,
It's-
yeah, because
it's
you.
commercial. We have X number of programs. Like I was reading, Egerton University has over 40 programs.
And when we hear about,
Which is fine,
it
they're
would be,
offering
it would
choice.
Be,
Sorry, dudes.
It would be great to have,
Without the capacity to actually teach all those.
Well, that's true. However, when we look at any word coming out of the universities, what we hear is September intake, January intake.
Yes.
We're trying to increase the numbers.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great if we had a situation where they would say, look, we have this particular course and this is what it would enable
This is
you
what it
to
is,
do
yes.
based on research that we have been able to do as an institution that would then eventually offer this course. This is what we've seen in the market. If you come in and you take this course, this is eventually what you would be able to do with it. Because it sounds so simple, but I think that's the level where we need to begin at. We need to be extremely simplified even in this targeted focus and in this targeted approach to say that practically, if you were to enter into this course, this is what you would then be able to do with it. Because I think also we operate at a level of ignorance where we say, okay, yeah, that's great.
doesn't-
If I actually did this,
But
what would it translate for me?
what are the requirements
What
for
would
this?
it be for me
Every
to
school
actually,
in this
what would
country
it come out
has
to
what
be?
you call a guidance counselor. It's a teacher who's assigned that job. One of
Career
the-
office kind of thing.
Yes. They have never been known to assist anybody in choosing a career. I know I'm making a damning statement, but they haven't. Because talk to anyone who very few people have an idea of what it is that they're getting into.
Yeah, so now what I'm saying is that this needs to be done before students actually enroll in the course. Because
No.
then you're telling
Not
them,
even
you're
enroll.
giving them options of what you would actually do. Even if
Universities
we're
should
talking
act-
about applied sciences, if you're
Indeed.
talking about targeted courses, you give them here are options that you could, because I think a lot of people, we are in the mindset whereby we think, okay, even if I were to go and register for this course, or if I were to register my son or daughter for this course, what would they then actually do practically with it here? But if we have it coming from the institutions in terms of this is what the market then has to offer for you later, or these are the options that you could actually use coming as pre-information, it would help in decision
Take
making.
pride in what you're offering. So university actually just goes and says, we take pride in being the best university for A, B, C, D, and this is what we offer. This is the kind of
And
skills
we are
that
an
actually-
institution of excellence.
and this is what we're offering in
Please
the market.
remember, these parents you speak of and teachers are products of these universities. So how do you expect them to think?
Well, if we're going to talk about changing,
That's what this new curriculum is trying to do. This one which is being fought.
CBC.
Yes. It's opening up that space that you're speaking of, where you start thinking about these things really early. Really, really early.
This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation at 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Well, we are also streaming, of course, like I keep saying, on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and you can post your comment there on a conversation that's happening on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, on Spice FM KE, and also on YouTube, Spice FM KE. When we come out of this break, we shift gears a little bit and go into what the president will be talking about at the United Nations General Assembly this afternoon. Good morning.
Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles. Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where, and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
All right, Mombasa Road at the General Motors section. We have a bit of a stuck situation there, but hopefully getting out of that and moving past Airtel will have the traffic flowing a lot smoother. All right, situation at Muthaiga Road is not good and leading towards the Thika Superhighway. Traffic is bumper to bumper right now. Coming off Wayaki Way, like we said before, is not so bad. The situation that is leading to the problem at Muthaiga is because of what we see on Kiambu Road, and we have traffic going in both directions. We have an overlapping situation. We don't know what is causing that, but that's why you see the issue that you do on the Thika Superhighway. All right, Riara Road, like we said, is a problem this morning, and there's traffic going in both directions, and this is because of the construction that we see on Gong Road, and this is being used as a feeder road. Everything else seems to be moving along quite swiftly this morning. If you see anything that we need to know about, do give us a call, 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
25 minutes to 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko City, Mugana, Eric Latif. Our frequencies are 90.9 in Nyeri. If you're in Eldoret, you're on 96.7. In Nakuru, 96.0. If you're traveling to Kisumu, you can catch us on 102.5. In Mombasa, 87.9. In Nairobi, of course, 94.4. We also are the first and only audiovisual radio station in the region. So we are transmitting on www.spicefm.co.ke and on Facebook, Spice FM. On YouTube, Spice FM. And on Twitter as well, Spice FM with the hashtag Situation Room. Ndu.
So the UN Climate Action Summit 2019 is ongoing as we speak. Sessions opened on Monday, the 23rd, with calls from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying the time for talk is enough. We have been talking for the last 20 odd years. We've been having conversations about what the situation is. We've been having conversations about where we are, but it's actually time for you to have things done. It's been said global emissions are reaching record levels and they show no sign of peaking. The last 4 years were the 4 hottest on record, and winter temperatures in the Arctic have risen by 3 degrees Celsius since 1990. Sea levels are rising, coral reefs are dying, and we are starting to see the life-threatening impact of climate change on health through air pollution, heat waves, and risks to food security. With the summit where global leaders are being called in to come to New York to talk about this, we are actually saying that the time for talk is over. And Guterres has called on world leaders not to come to New York to talk about what the status is, but to talk about practical solutions that countries are going to take and make to make sure that we're out of this situation. We have 10 years to go, and I dare say if we don't fix it, we are in trouble.
So the world is ending in 10 years?
We're going to be covered by water. We're going to be stricken by heat. We're going to see entire ecosystems plunge if we don't actually make good the promise, or make good on the promise, and have practical solutions to mitigating the consequences or the repercussions of climate change in different countries. It's interesting because today Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta addresses the assembly and talks about what Kenya has done or what Kenya is doing to mitigate all of this, and to say that yes, we're actually making strides in a positive direction to make sure that the effects of climate change can be reversed, number one, and then we maintain a certain level. We've talked about heat. CT a few days ago talked about it's actually hot. We can actually feel it. It's getting hotter, and we can feel it. Or the cold season has actually, been longer than what we expected it to be. We look at what no rain or not adequate rain, less rain than it was 5 years ago, shorter rainy seasons, longer dry periods. We see that the earth generally is 3 degrees hotter than it was almost 20 years ago. It is painting quite a grim picture, and I think we need to stand up, shut up, and actually take notice of what is going on. But the time for talk has long gone. We've talked. We've painted pictures, tears. We've had people pin themselves to wood, to trees. We've had people live in trees. We've had all sorts of things being done. But the time for practical solutions, action needs to happen now. Guterres spoke at the opening of the assembly on Monday, and he said some quite moving things. But here he called on world leaders to actually get something done. We can listen to what he had to say.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, nature is angry, and we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature, because nature always strikes back, and around the world, nature is striking back with fury. Consider the last few months. July, the hottest months ever. June through August, the hottest summer in the Northern Hemisphere ever, and the second hottest winter in the Southern Hemisphere ever. The years 2015 to 2019, the 5 hottest year on the books ever. Our warming Earth is issuing a chilling cry: stop. If we don't urgently change our ways of life, you jeopardize life itself. Look around. Seas are rising and oceans are acidifying. Glaciers are melting and corals are bleaching. Droughts are spreading and wildfires are burning. Deserts are expanding and access to water is dwindling. Heat waves are scorching and natural disasters are multiplying. Storms everywhere are more intense, more frequent, more deadly. I've seen it with my own eyes, from Dominica to the Sahel to the South Pacific.
Very poetic, isn't it?
Yeah, he's quite poetic.
The
but
very
this is
thing he
fueled,
told leaders not to do is what he's doing. Don't wax eloquent.
Yeah,
Don't be poetic. Then he proceeds to wax eloquent and then proceeds to...
He painted a picture and basically told world leaders, don't come and do this. Don't come and tell us what it is. Please,
we already know what it is.
We know what it is. I think now what he did is that he now presented and said, here, towards the end of what he spoke, he now said, okay, here we are.
He laid the case.
He laid the case and said, here we are. We need solutions. How are we going to get ourselves out of this mess? And asking how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess actually would point to the fact that we contributed to the mess. So now we must get ourselves out. And there's something that he said later is that if we're trying to dig ourselves out of this hole, one of the things that we must do is actually stop digging, because we're getting the hole deeper and deeper. How are we then going to climb out? One of the things that has been mentioned is the fact that, 1.5 degrees. The Earth is 1.5 degrees, and that's actually quite high if we want to look at it literally on a global scale. And we're saying, get us back in terms of the heat that we've created, in terms of the rising sea levels. Get us back to the pre-industrialization era, in terms of the heat of the earth and in terms of the levels of water, etc., etc. Now, of course, certain things have to be taken into consideration. The populations that we see now is not what was before the industrialization age. The weight on the Earth's natural resources is not as heavy as it was 50, 60 years ago. We have more people on the Earth. We have more people consuming these resources. We have more needs for water, things like energy, where we use coal, etc. But now he's saying that we need to have other solutions. We need to look towards other sources. And if we're going to bring it home and land the plane here in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta seems to know something that maybe we are not really sure of, what is being done in Kenya to make sure that these resources are being used maximally and make sure that we are in a situation where Kenya is actually going towards this expected end, or trying to reach this goal, to make sure that by the time we reach 2050, which is what the goal is now, 2050, take us back to pre-industrialization, whereby water levels were not rising at the speed at which they are now, and that the resources that we have, that we're using them well.
I've got two issues here. First of all, is this really a Kenyan problem? I know that sounds flippant somewhat. I appreciate that there's global warming. The role that Kenya plays in adding to this is very limited when we look at carbon emissions as a country. That's my first issue. Is this a Kenyan issue? Do we not have more pressing matters to be discussing at UNGA or at these meetings? That's my first issue, and I'll expound on that. Secondly, I think there's an element of unfairness from these developed countries when they come back to developing countries and tell them to reduce their emissions, having industrialized. Because we need this, we do need the energy that is used. We are going to emit carbon products into the atmosphere in order to develop and industrialize. For instance, Kenya, 68% of our emissions come from agriculture, which we need as an industry to grow. So if we're looking and focusing on emitting or reducing emissions, are we then cutting back or hindering our development and our progress? We've got to look at that. Or those are the two issues that stand out for me. Is global warming a Kenyan issue? And I know this goes against the grain of conventional wisdom and anything popular and supposedly woke out there. So I'm not saying there's no global warming, although I have suggested that there's theorists who say that this is a natural cycle of the Earth's evolution and it has warmed up before. We've had the ice age that has melted. I don't know enough about it as a scientist or as a geologist or whatever for me to comment on that. But what I will say from a geopolitical and economical perspective, is this a Kenyan issue? No, we have more pressing matters. Our emissions and our contribution to global warming is minimal compared to the countries, you've got the Chinas, the States and so on. I can give you the list in order of who's most polluting. So I don't think it's a Kenyan issue. I don't think the president should be placing any emphasis on this. We have developmental or development matters that, we have bigger fish to fry.
Don't you think global warming, by whoever is committing it largely, is affecting us?
Absolutely. But
more?
What say do we have? Can we impose sanctions on the U.S.? I mean, let's be realistic and pragmatic here. Can we say to the U.S., if you don't stop emitting X amount of tons of carbon into the atmosphere, we're going to impose sanctions? No. So it's not in our place to talk about this on a global level. We can play our part, which we are doing. We're looking at solar.
So we continue suffering from what others are doing without telling them that you guys, whatever you're doing, you're making us suffer.
No. Well, they are making us suffer, and that's where now we need to make the negotiations. Can we? Do we have the muscle in terms of social capital or any capital on a global platform? Any power? I don't think so. I'm being completely pragmatic here. Let's stop being utopian about this climate change issue. I think we're paying lip service to something we needn't be part of. I don't think we can put any pressure whatsoever on the international community to do anything about it. We can maybe capitalize on the trend and the zeitgeist by maybe doing things like ecotourism and so on. But in all honesty, this is not a Kenyan issue. Kenya does very little to contribute. Of course, internally, we could discuss this, things like the Mao Forest and, reforestation and so on. But on a global platform, this isn't a Kenyan issue.
It is lost.
No, I'm not lost. When you encounter a phenomenon, you need to give it a respectful silence. What Jerry is saying is actually quite profound. You see, we talk about carbon dioxide emission and we talk about industrialization, but that isn't the only culprit. Volcanoes are culprits, and the amount of carbon dioxide that volcanoes emit in the air are far more. It's colossal. What is also true is that every 10,000 years or so, according to scientists who study these things, the Earth goes through these changes. So this isn't the first time. This has happened 3 or 4 times before. It has happened. So this isn't new. What is being talked about is the human contribution of it, partly because we are more aware of it. But when you look at the focus, which doesn't take into account and explain what has happened before, and doesn't highlight what could possibly bring about these changes, then it falls into the conspiracy theory, crystal ball work here. Because the truth of the matter is, you're asking, how does this concern us exactly? How does it? We've had drought. We always have drought. It has nothing to do with the Uhuru Ruto government. drought will occur whether they're there or not. But because we live in a time when we are more informed and we have more resources and we're able to do more about it, then we bring in the question and we bring these people to book. We hold them to a higher accountability. It's not that we're saying they caused it. By the way, what we're discussing here has been discussed at great level. Oh my goodness! There are
Many-
people.
many times,
There are people who have made this their career. There are this group of people who say that when the Earth oscillates on its axis, there are times when it oscillates in a particular way, and because of that, you will have what we predominantly know as the Ice Age. When it then oscillates and tilts in a certain way, then you have a sudden warming of it. These things have happened before.
You realize how unpopular you are right now by agreeing with me, but
I
sort
am
of
merely saying what
not
exists.
riding the wave of the climate change
No,
brigade.
no.
Right.
No.
It's the current trend globally.
Look, we are discussing a massive dose of CO2 into the atmosphere. And we are calling it greenhouse effect. We are calling it Earth. We're saying this is what's causing it. And I'm saying not necessarily through industrialization.
Cows farting cause serious
Emissions.
of CO2. In fact, probably the highest, because people are becoming vegan now so as to avoid polluting. No, this is true. And one guy's suggestion for us not to eat cows was that we turn to cannibalism to save the world. It was an article I came across. I can't quote it right now, but it was very well sort of developed. And he talked about cannibalism in order for us to not eat cows and not to have to produce food, which in and of itself produces a lot of carbon byproducts, which then go into the atmosphere. So he spoke of the idea of cannibalism. And by that I mean, eating dead people, not
Eat one another.
not one another whilst alive.
Okay.
There's a gentleman. There are people who study these things, all right? So let me just quote a gentleman, okay? He's a geologist. Sebastian Kalesti taught a geologist at the University of Geneva. There are others. There's another one called Sutherland. They even date some of these events to some 252 million years ago. And the 252 million year ago event, according to them, was what he called, I'm quoting him, the poster child for runaway greenhouse effect. Meaning, what we think is terrible now is garden variety. It's mild. He's saying worse things than what we are seeing have taken place.
On this same earth.
Yes. Now, the very thing, the very focus that is being given to this thing, unfortunately, seems to have a commercial bent to it. The whole story isn't being told. Information that is balanced is being given out. There's a focus on one side. And then what do? You focus on what? The Amazon. The Amazon. You're burning this, you're burning that, you're doing this. Even that story of the greenhouse effect and the oxygen and the forest and what have you, the very process, the natural attrition where plants die, that process also uses up oxygen. People just don't seem to know this.
Right.
So when trees are cut down and when they go back to the natural state and go back to the earth, there's a balance of nature in these things that again is not being brought out. Let me explain to you this current discussion. Technically, it's called the Paleo-Eocene Thermal Maximum. That's what it's called. That's what it's called. What we refer to as the Ice Age, that particular event, that one is called the Permian Transit Extension. That's what it's called. People who study these fields will tell you and explain to you in great and enthusiastic details how these things happen. Our politicians, that's what the UN people are, have left all this out and they've now found an agenda. Jerry is right. We have drought to deal with. We have corruption
Loans to pay.
We have issues, more important issues to deal with. If there's more sun, good. Let us work and in
Develop solar energy for this country.
Energy technology. Let's focus on it. If suddenly the earth is melting, it will not be melting in Kenya only. The entire planet will melt. The truth is, it won't melt. There will be heat waves, and then the heat waves will go away. We've had times when we have El Nino, we have El Nino, it went away. Water may be rising in the Mississippi. It does right now. You would have an overflow every year. Now you have it several times a year. So what? It's happened before.
Okay, there are sort of trends towards the global warming. You articulate it so well that you might mislead people. Mine is purely questioning the theory as to whether it's. I feel really guilty now because now you've almost
pace,
reinforced that there is no global warming. What I was saying
There
is
are more
that
important things
there's
than global
theorists
warming.
that suggest there's no global warming. But I think for us as Kenyans, and not to say that we should contribute to it in terms of let's get back to, ensuring that we do get to this pledged for 10% reforestation. Let's try and use solar power and wind power. Let's try and expand geothermal and so on. Let's try and adopt low emission transport systems and so on. But given that, just globally, agriculture contributes 18% of carbon dioxide emissions. Now, you're telling us as a country that needs to feed ourselves, and we haven't gotten to food processing and value addition and so on. We are still at the agricultural level. You're telling us, well, can you cut down your emissions? Can you see how this is at conflict with our development agenda? Do you see what I mean?
So
and we're not even emitting that much. I think we contribute 0.1% into the world, into the global carbon dioxide emission.
So when we have the president of the country then already saying, even before he has said, going out and bearing the responsibility of setting the development agenda for this country, then presenting himself before the UN National Global Assembly, General Assembly, which he will do today, this afternoon, and already has said that Kenya is contributing, Kenya is doing its part. If these are the things that we should be taking into consideration and saying, this is what we should be focusing on, we should be focusing on feeding ourselves first. We should be focusing on developing agriculture as a backbone of this economy as Kenya. Why then do we have the leader of the country then going into these forums and saying this is actually what we're doing to help the world as well, without being very clear, setting an agenda and saying, okay, that's it's good that you all are doing this. However, this is where we need to focus in terms of development. He's going out and actually setting the pace and joining the foray and saying, yes, we're actually making our contribution.
It's diplomacy.
But also, it has happened in the Kyoto Protocol. I mean, the Kyoto Protocol was discussed. Kenya was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the developed countries that are supposed to reduce their emissions.
Yet we emit the least,
the
the
developed were supposed to reduce their emissions, and the developing countries did not have any requirement to reduce their emissions. It was actually there in the Kyoto Protocol. So it's about those guys. It was very clear. You guys are emitting a lot. You need to reduce your emissions. And then you guys are not emitting a lot. You also need to benefit from the emissions from these guys.
Yes.
And that's why the carbon trading started coming in. So because you've got forests, you've got the Congo Basin, you've got the entire forest there, you've got forests here, you should be able to also earn from the fact that you are contributing towards saving this globe. Whereas these guys who are emitting should be punished or should have some punitive measures to make sure that they're helping you in what you're doing already.
I find the concept of carbon trading quite interesting, but somewhat hypocritical or underpinned by hypocrisy. If the aim is to reduce carbon emissions, every country, basically the way it works is every country has stipulated amount and numbers in terms of tons that they can emit. Now, some countries, because they don't emit that much, a lot of the countries in the Caribbean, let's say in Polynesian islands, they don't emit that much. They can then trade their quota, what they haven't used, with America. They can sell that off. So in essence, everybody's reaching this quota. We're not actually reducing the carbon amount of carbon we're releasing into the atmosphere. But interesting fact here, I'm looking at an article that says if you want to reduce carbon emissions, eat less meat, what I had mentioned earlier. And I bet at this UNGA meeting, at the UN meeting, when they talk about carbon, there'll be slices of beef going around, there'll be burgers, people will be eating meat, steaks, and so on. All these leaders who are out there telling us to reduce our carbon emissions. But a cow, on average... They don't
listen to vegans, that's it. Yeah. We've got different campaigners.
A cow, on average, releases 70 to 120 kg of methane into the atmosphere every day. Now, I've got the facts and figures here, but people are now asking, are cows to blame for global warming? Are the cattle the true cause of climate change? And it goes on to say we can't deny that farming has a major impact on global warming. And since farming is basically serving the consumer's demand for food, we should look at our nourishment. So let's all be vegan. How far are we going to push this thing? Do you see what I mean?
You
It
know-
starts to become somewhat convoluted.
And then
Everybody
encroach on
has their own
people's-
idea of it.
Yeah.
No. The discussion is simply enlarged. Let me retract a little bit from what I said earlier on, not in the facts, but in simply
In the
saying-
sentiment?
something a little. You see, some of the effects that I give you technical terms to, what is defining and what concerns scientists is that it's the period of time it took for that occurrence to be what it was. Okay? Like, for instance, if you're talking about the Permian Triassic extinction, the Ice Age, that thing supposedly took 150,000 years. So there's a long period of time, and the changes that took a long time. That they've understood. Then came the next one, the one we refer to as the Paleo-Eocene thermal maximum. That is 10,000 to 20,000 years. What is concerning about this one is it's taken 150 years. So people are not sure what the actual consequences will be. Of
This
the
one is-
others,
this one is happening faster.
Yes.
It's a faster rate.
So prediction becomes difficult. The other one took a long time, so one could read patterns and see. So in this space of time, and this is supposed to happen, what do you really expect? What else will come into play that we haven't seen? That is what causes a lot of the discussion. I won't use the word panic.
Or the
among.
fact that human activity is a catalyst, and that's why
We are more.
it's happening faster.
We are more.
More than 150,000
Years ago, we are definitely more.
The population
we
is
are
larger
more.
now.
And yes,
And-
we are
and-
more. We're just
and the
much,
Earth
much.
is still the
We are,
same.
we are more.
And the Earth is still the same size.
Yeah, I mean, the Dutch have reclaimed some land, but statistically that is relevant if you're looking at the entire planet.
Yep.
But the point is that we are many.
We
So
are many
taking
more.
all of this into consideration, and maybe now my turn today to be a bit conspiratorial. If all of this has been taken into consideration by, let's say, the developed countries, the G8, as it were, just use the 8 of them before we then get wider into that sphere. Are they aware of this and the fact that, we probably are not as at much danger as we think we are, but they're in a position whereby they're emitting quite a lot and want to bring in others to help reduce their contribution to the degradation of the earth?
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it, yeah.
Spice up your life.
All right, we're giving Mombasa Road the all clear, getting into the CBD. We do have some clogged up traffic around the City Stadium roundabout, but that will move out slowly because we have police on the scene. There seems to be have been an accident right there. There's a perfect flow of traffic along Wayaki Way, inbound CBD from the Brookside Drive. We have police on ground, and the state of Naivasha Road is bumper to bumper. We still have that quagmire from Kingara Road to Riara Road, around Naivasha Road, heading out towards Ngong Road. It's a bit of a mess this morning. Everything else seems to be moving along smoothly. We have a bit of a situation around Siokimau heading towards the Cabanas. There's traffic untold is what we are being told. All right, now accident on Jago Road outbound at the Donholm Bridge, and that is causing some traffic. The police are on the scene. Anything else that you see that we need to know about, let us know. But for now, as is the time, traffic is moving along as normal.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. the only way to
Two
start
and a
your
half
day.
minutes past 9 o'clock. Good morning. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Our telephone lines 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. We are discussing what's going to be happening at the UN today. President Uhuru Kenyatta will be addressing the United Nations General Assembly. And among the things that he'll mention, of course, is climate change, which is among the things that are being discussed at the UNGA this year. And well, we are saying is what should the president say? What is the country doing about climate change? What should we be focusing on climate change, or what else should the president actually be pushing as an agenda when he's speaking to fellow leaders of the United Nations General Assembly? You were saying something at the top of the hour.
Well, I mean, if we're going to look at it from the point of view that perhaps it's not as bad as we think it is, and that the Earth is going through a cycle that it normally would, and that it went through the cycle before many of us were even on the Earth, before our existence. And if we are seeing that play out now, then perhaps also the developed, if we're just going to look specifically at the G8, they're looking for, it's kind of a rallying call for them to bring in other nations to help them reduce their footprint in terms of what they're putting out there and basically heating up the earth. It's a rallying call to get others to join them to help reduce or better the situation, as it were, because they are very well aware that there are many nations across the globe that don't contribute as heavily as them. So it's a rallying call to join in their concert to make sure that their footprint is less felt or lighter than it normally would be.
That's a good point, actually. Using us as usual, the imperialists. But just to give you a list of the top 20 nations with the highest CO2 emissions, of course, it's these greenhouse gases that go up there and pollute, and a number of different scientific processes happen that lead to global warming and climate change. So at the top of the list, you've got China, and then you've got the United States, European Union, India, Russia, Japan, Germany, South Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Canada, Indonesia, Mexico, Brazil, South Africa, so there's an African country there, Turkey, Australia, United Kingdom, and then at the bottom of the top 20, there's a three-way tie with Italy, San Marino, and the Vatican City. And then the least, the ones with the very low emissions, so nations with low level of emissions, you've got Kiribati, the Falkland Islands, Cook Islands, Dominica, Tonga, Solomon Islands. You can see that the nature of those ones at the very bottom.
Where you find Africans?
Well, where people just enjoy the sun, they don't have to manufacture and produce things and so on. But I mean, I've come across as one of those that deny, the climate change denial. I'm not saying that it's not happening, but in this instance, I don't think Africa needs to participate in this conversation because we are simply the victims. I don't want us to go there and make convictions as to the changes we will make. Those should be internal discussions. Africa, in terms of climate change, has bore the brunt of pollution and what the other countries are doing. So if we're going there to pay lip service and say we're going to do this, we're actually just masking the problem. Unless Uhuru goes there and blasts the West as to what they've done to Africa, because it's us who feel the impact of it. But we're going to go there and do this whole diplomatic thing and say, yes, we're also going to try and reduce our carbon emissions, which masks the problem. And this is why I say it's not our problem. I would rather we didn't speak about it on a global platform because we don't have the muscle, as I say, as a country to impose sanctions on anybody. All of Africa, I don't think we can go to these countries that I've listed at the top. These countries, you said G8 or the G8, I think it's G21 now.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
We've reached G21. These are powerful nations, China, the United States, the European Union, Japan, Germany. What are we going to say to them? And these are the people who are affecting our climate, and Africa is bearing the brunt. We feel the biggest impact. And that's why I find it somewhat shameful for us to go and share a platform with them and pretend, yes, we're also going to work on our emissions.
Perhaps there's an opportunity we can exploit.
No, the problem is completely, it's been reframed in the approach. And that's why I said Du had a very good point when she said, well, maybe they're using us to try and reduce their emissions. Absolutely. But they're also somewhat pacifying us by distracting us, and it's a form of deflection from what they're actually doing to Africa. And that's why I say we shouldn't participate in the whole.
I see an opportunity. And the opportunity is, we know now the world is talking about going green. Going green in terms of, using renewable sources of energy that we can use to industrialize, thinking of how we can, develop innovative ideas of using renewable energy, which is what we have in abundance. We have wind in abundance. We have solar in abundance. We have geothermal in Kenya in abundance. We don't have oil in abundance. That is a polluter. We don't have coal in abundance. That's a polluter. So this is an opportunity for us actually to push that agenda and say, as big players of, as our contribution to reduce emissions is using our renewable energy sources. So now,
which we have pledged to do,
which we have.
But
So now
why are we making pledges to people who are affecting us adversely, and they're not living up to their pledges?
The opportunity here is actually now pushing them to a point where they start investing in our renewable energy. So we are using this opportunity to industrialize ourselves, but also by not polluting, and it becomes faster and cheaper.
Every
and
country
more,
has wind, so we can't export.
Not every country has solar.
Wind
The kind of.
Well, the US and these countries at the top of the list have that.
And they're not exploiting it. Yet they could come here because they don't have the land. They could
then,
come here
and then
we can
buy
invest
it,
this.
and we transport this energy to
No,
the
we
US.
use
What
it
model
to
are you
industrialize
looking at?
ourselves.
we do not need to export it to anybody.
We don't need
We
to.
need to
What we need is
industrialize
for
ourselves.
We need it here.
Which I have said. So internally, as these conversations, we should have them.
One of the reasons why when we were discussing
reduce
energy the other
carbon
day, when
emissions?
CT was raising the issue of energy the other day, we actually also mentioned that one of the barriers to our expanded use of exploiting of these resources is the capital and the scientific innovation around it. So this is an opportunity for us to actually push those guys because they are already advanced in innovation to start investing in innovation to come and help us.
Actually,
So we're going to beg for help from the very people who are messing up our climate.
Not beg for
Like
help.
this is it. We must
turn
look
it
like
around.
jokers on the global
We turn it
platform
around.
as Africans.
We
That's
turn
not
it
what
around. We
that's
make
not-
them feel
That's not what
guilty.
Eric is saying.
We make them feel guilty and they
They
start
couldn't
investing
give
in
a
it.
toss. Of course, they don't feel guilty. They don't
do.
care.
That's why they're discussing this thing. That's why they're discussing it.
No.
I
mean,
think
they might-
also they look at it from a point of, what, we will not be able to continue to exploit from this from the planet if things actually go up in flames. So the rallying call will
Flames
be
where?
okay, well, not literally, but if we don't have,
nihilistic assertion.
exactly, if we don't have areas from which we continue to exploit, if we cannot continue to get the resources that we need to lead the pack per se, if they don't have that, then they don't want a situation where they will be at zero at all.
We have this problem which we have difficulties solving. So let's make it your problem and let's have you discuss it as though you also have the problem.
Exactly.
Yet you are the victim
Yes,
of
you
the
are
problem.
Yes,
we don't
you-
have that problem.
Yes,
It's
you are the
created for us.
You are the
Absolutely. This is
creator.
what I'm saying.
Yes, you
If
are the
we are going
creator
to
and the
be-
victim at the same
if
time.
we're
We really
going
don't
to
have
be-
anything to do with it.
And this is why I'm saying, if we're going to be conscientious about the environment, which we should be, it should be an internal agenda, which we have made it so, whereby we look at expanding geothermal, we look at expanding solar, wind, we look at bringing tree coverage in the country back or up by 10%, activities such as this. But to go on a global platform and speak and interact and make pledges to the very people who are polluting and contributing the highest carbon emissions that are affecting us. Africa is suffering the most in terms of climate change.
You don't know whether
we
the
are the
president will be
biggest.
making pledges
We are the
unless you
biggest
wrote the
victims.
No. Our
Unless you
job
wrote
is
the
not to
speech.
try and figure out what the president is going to say. Our job is to say what we think ought to be done.
And that's what I'm
And
saying.
we are going
He
we are
ought to
going to
go
go
there
into some
and take
seriously
advantage.
high theory here.
Well, I've got Killen on the line from Kisumu. Killen, good morning.
A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I have something that you guys must take very seriously because all African leaders have been flower girls to the West, and you know this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start it from that point. Number two, who have caused the Amazon to shrink is the West. Who have caused the Congo Delta to shrink is the West. And they changed the so-called the G21 that you're talking about. So what else do you think that we are going to make that is going to be of significance to the global marking on global warming when they already have a strategy of talking about something called green energy, when they know that the technology behind green energy is them, and they're going to sell us this technology in piecemeals, like buy the solar panels. I had one of us there. Can you remember your name? The guy who was saying that we have it all here, that we have the sun,
Eric.
the water. What's the name?
Eric, yes.
I heard Eric say that we have the local.
We have geothermal, we have solar, we have wind.
Yeah, but we have geothermal, we have solar, we have all these that you're talking about, but we don't have the technology, so we are going to buy it again from them. Yeah.
Yes.
So when we are only going to African leaders are going. They are like a snake going around the ball, but chasing its tail. So we are chasing the tail. Not knowing that we are the head. The most foolish idea that has come in the world is this consortium of global conferences and making things look a little more serious. But when you look at the damage that is being done into Congo today, like I'm talking to you now, Congo is losing a size of a football, twice the size of a football pitch per hour.
Amazon is not far behind.
Amazon is far worse than this. And remember that what controls the most the purification of the wind across Atlantic and across Pacific is Amazon and Congo. And nobody seems to be addressing it. If you look at the kind of rush and the haste that is coming into the building of the railway towards Congo is to take everything from Congo. I don't know what we are going to talk about. Like, for example, the most archaic thing in the world is that we are talking about global warming, and Africa is becoming a dumping site. What are we talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You
For
mentioned
nuclear
something
waste material at that.
No, you asked a question. You stated that we are dependent on buying things from them. How is that a bad thing?
They make us dependent.
Honestly, you want to know how it's a bad thing?
That is exactly what I'd like to know. Yes.
Eric, that is what you asked.
No, this is CT. This is CT Muga.
Listen to this. Listen to this first. Yeah. You are taking chocolate, cocoa out of Africa to Europe. Then it gets in Switzerland, then gets back as a bar of chocolate, and sold at a price that they determine. When you're picking cocoa from here, it is not determined. When gold is leaving Africa for the European market, it has no value. But when it gets back as a ban, it has real value. What are we talking about? Are we getting somewhere? We are talking about, all these raw materials that are going to build the solar panels are from Africa. We should be dictating what somebody is buying from us. And at the price at which is selling it back. Like, for example, I'm buying an orange from you. Then make juice. If I'm coming back to sell the orange juice for you, should it be twice as much or thrice as much?
No, I have a response to that question you've actually raised. Forget the orange. Plant avocados.
Oh yeah, no.
Thank you.
I love it. In exchange of ways, yeah. Look at the kind of policy that we are talking about.
Killen, just to respond to you on the issue that I was raising. So here we are. We have a conversation that's happening, being led and being spearheaded, and it was started by the West, the polluters, right?
Yes.
And you're saying the polluters are the owners of technology right now and the owners of the innovation right now. But they're at a point where they are raising, out of whether it's guilt or whatever reason, they are starting this conversation. As a victim, if we sit outside the room and say we are not going to participate in your conversation, we may be losing an opportunity. And I see an opportunity here where we can leverage, we can use our position to leverage so that we say we can actually push so we have cheaper technology, for example. We get cheaper innovation, for example, so that all these things that we're talking about, we have them in abundance and we need them because we need to industrialize. We have to industrialize ourselves. We need energy.
Listen to this. You know why we don't have the Patrice Lumumba and the Sankaras and the Kwame Nkrumahs and the like? Because they were thinking otherwise. Look at the last victim in Africa is Gaddafi. Because they were thinking otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, when you're talking about this, these guys only want to know what African leaders are thinking. They don't care what they're coming to bring. They only want.
They
to
just
know
want to know what you might be thinking or where your thought processes are.
Right. These guys are not interested in anything whether you want a leverage or anything. They don't care because they know they're on top of the game.
In
So they
fact,
just want to know
in
that-
fact, what we're not realizing is this could be a platform for even more abuse in terms of the pledges we make that we will be held ransom to for any aid that we want and so on. So we're making pledges on something that doesn't affect
You guys are all
us.
not hearing me. I am saying that we should not be going there to make pledges. We should be going there to take on
We
opportunity.
don't have
And,
that muscle.
We should leverage
Not on a
and say,
global platform. We
Leverage
don't
on the
have
guilt.
muscle to
leverage
make
on their guilt.
They're
and say,
not
so
that
you guys
guilty.
are here talking
no,
about this.
no.
This is how we need
You've
to
got
go.
to understand the mind of the West. They're very selfish, exploitative people. They're not out there to help us and feel guilty about not helping us.
Interestingly, they even for them to be having a conversation with us, especially when you look at countries like the US, they're not going to be having a conversation with you if there's nothing that they're going to benefit from that conversation.
Yes.
They won't discuss with you. They will
Yes.
not. They will not regard you
that's
at all.
And that's the approach that we should also go into this conversation.
No,
I
we should
think
be
the-
part
I
of the
think
conversation.
The approach that we should have is actually look inward. We should actually be looking inward and develop those sectors that we have within the country for the benefit of ourselves. I think that's where we should be going.
Did I hear it
Not-
sometimes back that we actually have a Kenyan who's actually invented a car?
An ordinary example. Let me drop in an ordinary example. Excuse
Yes.
me. When the planes were so loud in Europe, the Europeans complained that these planes are so loud. Then they sold all the planes to Africa and gave sanctions that no loud planes to Europe. So Africa has to buy their own planes and at the same time buy the new planes that can fly back to Europe. Am I not saying something?
I like the bit at the same time buy the planes that can fly back to Europe. So internally we use
That's
these
right.
noisy planes.
You are compelled to buy a cheaper one. That you're told is cheap, that is very loud. The so-called the flight 540 and,
And
the
then,
like.
and then you come to realize that one can't fly into European airspace. So you have to buy
That's
them.
right.
So you have to buy both.
Right. So you're compelled to buy.
So
now-
what is it? Are we stupid? Why did we do it?
I think we've been
because you're stupid.
yeah, we've been brainwashed to the point that we think we're actually
been
part.
had.
We
We've
think
been
we are part of
hoodwinked,
the conversation,
bamboozled,
but we're
run
actually
amok.
not part of the conversation. We're actually spectators. We're actually not part of the conversation. We've been brainwashed to think that we are.
Okay,
I've had an experience somewhere, sometimes back in Netherlands, when I went back and we were taken through some museum which had a huge amount of gold. And when I was being told about the background of that whole, the chronology of how it came and blah, 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 and how rich that country is and stuff, I simply asked the curator in the museum that it's so interesting that this gold must have either come from Amsterdam or Rotterdam, because those are the size of the minefields that could be. But if you say it's not coming from either, then it is stolen, isn't it? Then the curator simply walked out of the museum. I mean, from us, because I was simply asking a very intellectual question. And when he realized this, they kept off me. So it's like you're going to London and telling them that Buckingham Palace is one of the most beautiful things, and it's a global icon and a global symbol and things like that. And you're not talking about the gold that was taken from Taj Mahal and from Africa and every other. Then you're cheating them. It is high time we start telling them what Mugabe used to tell them.
Speak
That,
the
don't
truth.
tell me what is ours that you took.
Asante sana, Kilin. Thank you for joining us.
I'm loving his passion on the matter.
Thank you for your contribution this
Thank you.
morning, Kilin.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you very much.
Too.
Hope to hear from you soon.
All right.
So he's telling it as it is. And he's not masking it. So a lot
So,
of this
so,
diplomacy
so if we
is
say that we
because
don't,
have a
if we say we
dependency
don't
on the
participate
West
in these
as well.
conversations, so what do we do? So we are still, yes, there's global, whatever is happening to climate,
What
in
does
climate
our
change.
participation, how does it benefit us?
How does it benefit
That's
us?
what
It
I'm-
actually
and
works
that's what I'm
to
saying.
our
We should
detriment.
think of
No,
how
no,
we
no,
can
no.
take advantage of this.
We don't have that advantage. We don't have that muscle. We don't have that.
We've got leverage in this particular case.
No, we
We're
have
going in
zero
there saying,
leverage on
"You
this platform."
guys-
Don't
What is the
mention-
format of this leverage?
I've
What I'm
always been a
suggesting-
champion for development, and I think that it is very clear in this case. There are things that we have that we can be doing. Guterres has made a very passionate plea here and called on world leaders, but definitely here we are looking at we are spectators in a conversation that really doesn't concern us.
It
We're
affects
cheering
us,
on. It
though.
affects us.
It concerns us because it affects us.
Yes, however, we have so many things that we can. You talked about what we have here within this country that we could be spending our time developing. There are things that we can be doing here. It doesn't mean that we need each and every global leader who is there championing, rallying up calls and saying, come and join us, we must reduce our emissions for something that we don't even contribute to. He's saying that here is a time that we need to be acting. We need to be acting because they've realized, what we've actually contributed to the detriment of this planet. And we contribute in the sense that we are actually bearing the brunt of all of this damage.
We've got to be selfish. We've got to realize that we must.
We do have to be selfish and develop ourselves as countries.
You can't be selfish when you're reliant on other countries for aid and so on. What is going to happen, what tends to happen at these symposiums, forums, conferences, whatever they are, is that we will make pledges that we will then be held ransom to for any aid. And that pledge is to work and benefit the West. So we will say, yes, we will reduce our carbon emissions by XYZ. We will have this amount of energy produced by either geothermal, solar, or wind. So we will make pledges, and that's helping them because that allows them to continue emitting their quota without affecting the climate too adversely, or we're not contributing to it. And then when we want aid or when we don't adhere to these pledges,
they will be said,
we'll be told
it's
we'll be held ransom
back
to this.
Yes,
this is what happens here. Absolutely.
0719
we'll come out compromised.
0719 012 That's 0719 012 Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your program. Good morning. I wanted to say that now Del Monte has to go away. All those people will lose their jobs. It's all the time losing jobs so that houses are built. Greenery gives us food. Now the Egypt exhibition at Sarit, they got gunya full of dry leaves from the guava tree to make tea. They got dry leaves of avocado to make tea. You buy the leaves and then you make the powder and you have your tea. So with greens, you are full. You get your food. But businesses are honest, hard workers. But the KRA is overtaxing you till you just have to force yourself to close down. So why does KRA overtax? Pay levies, pay rates, pay this, then City Council wants their taxation.
Lydia, what do you think of the climate change talks?
Have you been listening to our conversation this morning?
Yes. The climate change is just killing trees, the greens, robbing money for dams. So that is what will improve. I always say you will stay alive if you have water to drink and eat the food grown around you and have a place to sleep. We don't need nuclear,
I see.
anything like that.
Keep it simple.
Plastics poured in the sea.
Asante
Thank
sana, Lydia. Good day.
Good day.
Thank you, Lydia.
Our line is 0719 012 0719 012 The conversation is also happening on Facebook as Spice FM KE and on Twitter Spice FM KE using the hashtag Situation Room. The hashtag is Situation Room. We've got Weber calling in from Kisumu. Good morning, Weber. Weber.
Morning, Eric.
Morning. I think you need to switch off your radio, Weber. You want to hear yourself?
Put the volume down. It's nice to hear yourself.
Yes, go ahead, Weber. Yes.
When a neighbor has wronged you, and the neighbor knows that he has wronged you,
yep,
he'll prepare a cup of tea and call you for that cup of tea, and make everything that is possible for you that you could need for that cup of tea.
But keeps wronging you.
It will entice you. So that's what the West are doing to us right now, because they know they have wronged us. There's a caller who was just called earlier on. These people are taking things from Africa, taking them from us, going to manufacture them and bring them back to us. So it has come to their realization that they have wronged us. So that's why they are coming back to us. They want to read our minds and see where the page we are reading from. So it's upon us to wake up and sniff the coffee and to make them see that we have known the direction that they have taken, the mistake they have made, and we need to show them that there are things we are putting in place.
So, are you saying
Hello?
should we participate in the conversations or not? Should you go to your neighbor's house, or should you realize what the neighbor is trying to do and say sikuji?
I'll make my own tea at home and drink.
The best thing, Mr. Kenyatta, in today's conference, you should make these guys know that in the Big Four agenda, manufacturing is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really rely. We don't need to rely that much on them. So they should start searching for other avenues. Do say that if we are producing oranges, we start producing avocados. You see, they know that. They'll still know that we need to get from them.
Yep.
Look at for an example of the Mias. The Mias failed, and you see the farmers who are depending on it to grow sugarcane and the stuff, they suffered. Eh?
Yeah.
So they know that if they withdraw such a kind of thing, we shall suffer. But we need to make them see that we cannot suffer because we shall be interdependent.
Okay, thank you. What I want to look at, because he's brought up the Big Four, which is interesting, is are we going to put our national agendas first, our national interest first, and make sure we reach our goals in terms of the Big Four? Two of them being manufacturing and agriculture, which would use a lot of energy, and there will be the carbon emissions. Of course, we can look to minimize this, i.e. use the right sort of energy, infinite energy or what have you. But are we going to pledge allegiance to our national interest and stick to that? Or are we going to talk about climate change and pay lip service and do this whole I don't know. I find it an act sometimes by the leaders.
Do you remember that we wanted to be part of the Security Council? Remember? There's trying to be part and parcel of the big boys club. I think that's what this is about. How it helps us directly, I'm not very clear. Maybe we might be made prefects, and we might oversee other natives on this continent. But there's a point here. When the government talks about they want forestation at 10%, they're actually joking. They should talk about 50% onward. What on earth is 10%?
It's a token.
It's a minimum.
It's a token.
Yes.
Minimal token.
Yes.
In terms of what you should
That's
actually
the minimum
be doing.
recommendation.
That minimum should
Are
be
we
50.
back to bashing the government? Because all your conversations, CT, that is where they end
The
up.
reason why
we
I'm
filter
heading in
any
this direction,
conversation. At the end of it,
I
it's
would
that
like it
the
to be
government is doing
filtered.
a crap job.
They are doing a crap job, and they should be told, and they should know.
Okay, can we discuss?
I am
Unga
actually
today,
going
though?
somewhere. I started with forestation for a simple reason. If you're talking about what we should do, this is something we should do, and 10% won't cut it. All these things we speak about, whether we want to ensure that we the greenhouse effect that we speak of is minimized in our country, a lot of these things would begin with this very process. These things influence rainfall. If you're talking about rainfall, which we get in abundance, what is the plan that the government is enforcing to ensure that we actually harvest that water? It's a plan at every stage. Just like we succeeded with the rural electrification. It was done well. We have it. Why can't you do it with water? Because we have what that we already have. It rains. Now,
Can you see how these are the conversations we should be having? Sorry.
I thought I'm the one who began this conversation.
These are the conversations.
But I should see it a little more than I'm seeing it now.
I was helping you along.
Yes. The government bashing has to begin because these are initiatives that individuals can do and they can take it. But when the government makes it a priority, it moves faster and a lot more is done. And we do have institutions who can help. We have KARI. We have people we have the forestation people. We have people
whose sole
this is
job,
what they
this
do,
is what
and
they
believe
do, and
me,
this is
they
why
know
were hired.
what to do.
Yes, they
And
know what
they
to
can do it.
They do know what to do.
These are national conversations.
And I think these conversations need to be held on an international level.
Yes.
Because you know what it does? It also makes the international arena aware that you know what you're doing as a nation. Now, if you get on that scene or if you get into that arena and you're saying, that's fantastic that you are having this conversation, but let me tell you what it is that we are doing. Because then now what that starts to do is that it now makes others realize that you're not just some country sitting in some, I don't want to use the words that
in
others
some
are
backwater third world environment, yes,
doing nothing
and pretending to be a middle income economy,
right?
Yes,
but that premise must have been established within the borders of this country first before you can take that conversation out there. If you want to be seen as serious, to be part of this big boys club, as you've said it, they're not going to take notice of you if you're not doing the things that you require by your citizens.
Why don't we have an African big boys club instead of trying to join these big boys clubs that are, Western orientated, underpinned by imperial powers? Why don't we look to strengthen the AU, for instance, so that we have collective bargaining power with institutions like UNGA, with other countries? Do you see? Why don't we create our own, have our own blueprint instead of us trying to belong?
We actually have, and we did.
We do have the AU,
and we even let's not
called.
even go to the AU. Remember the earlier conversation about the progress with the university expansion taking us backwards. We had an East African community. It actually functioned. We were not trying to make it function. It was functioning. It worked. We even had the Tanzania shilling could be used. Let me tell you, we had East African Airways, we had East African Harbours Corporation. Certain basic functions were East Africanized.
And they worked.
Boy, did they work well.
The conversation.
We came up with this thing long before the EU.
Yep. And the conversation is actually happening at a global stage now about climate change and the impacts of climate change and global warming. And this is what one young girl was talking about, telling the leaders. She told, who's this young girl?
Her name is Greta. She's Swedish, and she has held this passion for saving the earth for quite a while now, and she believes that the world leaders have actually failed. And she said, you asked, I should be in school. Well, you'll hear what she has to say, but she's very passionate about changing the situation for the better as concerns climate change.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Calling all homeowners present and future. It's time to live your dream in your dream home. Whether you're looking to buy or simply renovate it. From Friday 27th to Sunday 29th of September 2019 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. come on over and be part of the Owner Home Expo at KICC, courtesy of the Standard Group in partnership with The Property Show. Get to interact with home developers, real estate representatives, financial advisors, as well as other private and public players in the market to help you realize your home goals. It's your window of opportunity. Your door has finally opened and entry for all will be absolutely free. Owner Home Expo.
The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM.
Calling all Spice FM listeners. Feeling a little light in the pocket? This is your chance to win as much as 5,000 shillings every day on the Spice Drive with me, Monique, by simply participating in our brand new Spice FM Mystery Voice Challenge. If you think you can recognize this mystery voice,
there's a time I came home at 8.
Then call into the Spice Drive every weekday or participate via social media to claim your prize. Spice FM. Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
All right, Gong Road is going to be of tales told by the end of this day when everybody gets out of that mess that is traffic coming in from Naivasha Road, Kingara Road and Riara Road in both directions. We tried to overlap, we tried to find alternative routes, but it has caused a bigger situation than what we started out with. I hope that gets sorted out quickly because it is around about 9:30 and nothing is moving. The jam from Siokimau towards Cabanas also is of fairy tales and it's quite a mess right now. Hopefully that will get cleared up soon. Jogo Road is bumper to bumper now for some reason and trying to head towards the city stadium roundabout, and that could be because of what we see coming through from Donholm Bridge outbound. Apart from that, Thika Road, Wayaki Way, not looking so bad. Langata Road coming down towards the roundabout and also towards the CBD, not so much of an issue anymore. 'Tis the hour, 'tis the time. Anything that you see out of the ordinary or something that we can help with, give us a call, 0719-012-600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
22 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation in the room. CT Muga, Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko, and I'm Eric Latif. Well, we're having a conversation around the climate change and global warming. Not just us, actually. It's a global conversation, and it's happening around this week in New York at the United Nations General Assembly. The sidelines of the talks here, and in fact, even inside the General Assembly itself. President Uhuru Kenyatta will be delivering his speech to the United Nations General Assembly this afternoon. And Monica Juma, the CS for Foreign Affairs, has said that among the things that the president will mention is, of course, climate change, in addition to talking about the things that really matter to Kenya, including security, including food security, and including security as well. And of course, he must mention the Big Four agenda, where he'll talk about manufacturing and the way to get Kenya to the next level. But you guys are saying that he shouldn't talk about climate change.
I don't even think the UN should hold a symposium on climate change. Look at, incidentally, we happen to have the headquarters for the United Nations Environmental Program. Have you seen the cars that the UN drive in this country, the fuel guzzlers that they drive in this country? Do you not find that in and of itself hypocritical? If they were genuine, even as the UN and these international organizations, about any of their agendas, whether it's aid, excuse me, whatever it was, their job would have been finished by now in terms of they would have completed the mission. So you have NGOs coming to help us. Why do we never get to the end of it? Why do we never reach a point? Okay, project finished. We no longer have that problem.
You're done.
So, for instance, with the UK, or let's look at an example of when a country was helped, the project finished and they left. And it was successful. The Marshall Plan after the Second World War. The UK or the US gave Europe money to rebuild themselves. They rebuilt themselves, and that was the end of the story. They were then self-sustainable, economies grew. If anybody was looking to help Africa, whether it's the UN, whether it's these countries helping with aid and loans and so on, they could do exactly the same. This was done to a country that had been flattened in war. So you wonder what the intentions are. I've veered off and digressed off a little bit.
I don't think you have.
It's in order
you're
to
getting to the
question,
heart of the matter.
It's in order also to question what is the UN doing in Kenya as a peacekeeping mission. I think for me, UN lost its credibility and legitimacy in Rwanda or after Rwanda and their lack of action. In terms of what other projects they're doing, why do we never complete them? Why is it a perpetual state of dependency on these agencies? Of course, for them, it's a creation of jobs for a huge number of people. Salaries are, a UN lifestyle in Africa. It's brilliant.
It can't get better.
It can't. You have your education paid for. You're living in suburbia.
So
and
essentially, it's a system that's intended to benefit their people.
And it's self-serving, but also perpetual. It will never end. And it actually, their existence, the UN's existence in Nairobi, it distorts our economy in terms of rentals and things like that, because they don't have caps as to how much they pay.
Right.
So you have people, landlords, they're waiting for UN people and they've put their rates up. Okay, I'm ranting on and going on a bit, but when it comes to the hypocrisy of the West, we could go on and on, including the hypocrisy of the UN, by virtue of the fact that their staff here are driving fuel guzzlers under the UNEP program, the environmental program, and they're going to sit there and host or give people a platform to discuss climate change and then ask Kenya what we're going to do about it, and they themselves are in Kenya driving these fuel guzzlers. There's just too much hypocrisy in all of it.
Eric, there's something you mentioned about leverage. Two countries, two geographical entities come to mind. China, Taiwan, which is part of China. For the longest time, when we had the Cold War, people considered China some backwater that didn't amount to much. And they were known for cheap products that didn't last very long, zero quality. That story changed a long time ago. China then became the hub where all serious manufacturers went to. Taiwan continued, produced things that, well, let's say they have a range of things, from the fishy to the not so fishy to the actually very efficient and good. Same with China, meaning a product for any sort of market. These are people who looked at the West, understood what they did, and used the very thing that the West does to benefit themselves.
They went home and essentially did their homework. Because if you want to look at history, there was a time they, quote unquote, were silent. Silent. They went home, they removed themselves from that radar and went and they developed themselves with what they had. They, just like you said, they looked and they said, oh, okay, this is what is going on. Fantastic, no problem. They went home and they built from the bottom up and they said, with what we have, this is what we're going to develop. You can be out there with your rallying calls saying whatever it is that you need to do. Here we are, we're going to develop, and then voila. They presented themselves back to the world as more than a force to be reckoned with. And I dare say that that is something that
West,
we can
the
copy.
West refers to China as an emerging world power. You know that is
they're here, man. They're not emerging. They're here.
They are the premier world. Those people are powerful.
They're here.
In 30
India
years.
is
India
up.
too.
Yes, but let me take you back to the Japan. Who would have thought that this small little place would become one of the topmost manufacturers of industrial goods in the country?
A superpower.
I love it.
Who would have?
I love it, CT, because you know what? Did you know that the camera is part of Japan's national dress? The camera, the picture, the Polaroid you take pictures with. And do you know why? Because wherever they went, they had this camera and they would take pictures. It was actually in their history. They would take pictures of what they saw that they felt could actually benefit them as a country. They would take pictures and then they would come back home and then they would develop for themselves. And that is actually what boosted them in terms of now how they were able to drive and push their economy. So we're seeing it can be done. It's been done. You don't have to necessarily join the conversation. But you know what? Guess what? The Kyoto Protocol, everybody traveled. They left where they were and went to Japan and had the conversations about how now we need to lower this, because then they felt threatened at some point and said, you know what? We can see other nations developing, coming up and actually doing what we did. We need to ask them also to join this rallying call so that we can continue to eat from the pie or eat from the cake. But what we are saying is, yes, we can learn. We can learn and then come back home and do. We can learn and come back home and do. We can. And that's what we're saying that we should do.
Jerry, why I bash the government at every turn, please remember it's tongue in cheek. I also say positive things that they actually do. But why I bash them at every turn is because there are certain things that only they must do. The rallying call that galvanizes a nation to move forward, politicians, government, we have people who've invented things. We see them in the papers every other day. Tell me that we have a ministry that deals with such things. Industry, something or the other. Science, there's something or the other. That one, yes. We even have funding for these things. How far do these things actually go? We have people who have come up with our cars, so to speak.
As a government, we have to be more serious about investing in our own people and our own businesses,
And
which
giving
is how China
our
has grown.
people this sense of ownership and pride in ourselves is something that this agenda must be
National
pushed.
pride.
We must like ourselves. We must love our
Absolutely.
things. Not by platitudes and statements that are made at platforms by people who mean absolutely nothing. In fact, half the time they don't even understand the things they
What
say
they're
themselves.
saying, yes.
Now, when this happens, then when someone comes up with something that they call a Kenyan car, even if that thing breaks down every 2 kilometers,
It is okay.
I will buy
Flowers.
it. Let it break down. At some point, it will work, but it's Kenyan.
This young girl who spoke, and she was quite passionate, and at
She was
some
very
point, yeah,
passionate.
shed a tear. It would be good. You know, we also had people who mimicked her. President Trump actually made a snide comment about what it is that she was saying. People,
Why
made fun
are
of
we
her, but
bringing this person in a serious discussion? Why are we introducing this
Oh,
individual?
because she's
There's a
actually a
point.
very serious
There's a
person.
point.
No,
By
no.
the time
The
she's
President
speaking,
Trump is what I'm
there,
talking
okay,
about,
well,
not the young lady.
I'm
Young
just
lady
saying
is
that
very
what was
serious.
brought against her. But you know
Yes.
what she said? She actually was not speaking about herself. She said, "I am here and I should be in school, but I am actually privileged." Look at the people who are suffering because of promises that you make or things that you said that you were going to do, but you've actually not done. And I can take that, I can replicate it in the Kenyan context or in any other context of any other country. Why are we not developing ourselves? Go back and do that thing which you need to do before we come and have these conversations that really don't matter. They're neither here nor there. Why are we not developing ourselves? Why are we not taking ourselves moving forward one step, one foot in front of the other? For us then to be recognized. For us to actually, like you said, we're making these speeches and we don't even really understand what is going on.
I mean, who should I bash? You have these situations and there are people in authority whose mandate it is to do these things that we're talking about. Who should I focus my attention on as opposed to them?
We shouldn't even pay attention to these global powers, as it were. We should pay
be
attention
passionate.
to ourselves.
At every given opportunity, they must be called out so that they know. Because they'll otherwise go around thinking they're doing these wonderful, these things they say which they don't mean, which they don't do. They say it so often, they likely think they do them.
Be as passionate as Killen is, because he's called back. Killen, good morning.
Hello.
Yes,
Morning.
Yeah, I'm back again. You know, one thing that amazes me with you guys, how you're talking this thing. I'm so passionate about global warming, and I know I'm so pained. The only thing that we have failed as us, like for example, you have an opportunity of being in that studio and then disseminating this kind of information. The threat that you should pose right now to any child that is below 5 years of age, that they don't have a future. Then if that signal is received well from the ground, then we shall see some light. But in as long as there isn't any signals that are being not sent to, there is a disinformation for any child below 5 years of age, honestly, the global warming is real. Do you know that the only thing that has kept both the climates of the South Pole and the North Pole alive is the Amazon and the African tropical? So when you're talking about the African tropical forest, a tropical equatorial forest, and you're talking about the Amazon, we are talking about the Antarctica and the North Poles and stuff, all these kind of things. You're talking about all these things together, and somebody is not. Do you know that that little girl that had the opportunity to tell the world leaders about that only said it at that age because she was a baby and she could be heard because she was a white skin, But I'm telling you, the same lady, if you take records of that little girl in the age of 20 or 30 years of age, she will have had a changed opinion of how to look at things. She'll be told that it's not meant for her. She'll become the white people that we know. Let me take you back to what it was in the U.S. in 1960 when Kennedy came to power. All black men knew that they were liberated. Today, what is happening? Police crime on the blacks in America has tripled. Actually, it's so alarming. And who is reporting it? Nobody. Yeah. Let's go to Europe and see how blacks are treated. We had a similar exodus like this in the 1940s when there was the Second World War. People were moving from Europe to Africa. We didn't block them. Mediterranean was open for every other person. It was hugging everybody. There was no such accidents that we are experiencing right now. Yeah. No, what I'm trying to tell you in short, that if we are not going to intoxicate our children with the reality right now about the future of the globe, the planet Earth, the Mother Earth, we are not going anywhere. Let it be known to the world that in Kenya, people know that the West are spoiling the world, and they all know that all these calamities that are coming, the global warming, the drought, the famine, and every other thing is created by these people. Let them know that these people have never drunk coffee grown from their land. They have never had chocolate grown from their land. They have never had tea grown from their land. All this is coming from Africa. And who are the laborers? And what is the condition of the laborer?
My brother, when we
Today-
can I ask a question, please?
Today, when you compare the Massey Ferguson family, you'd trace it back to about 150 years. But if you trace back the cotton growing people from the cotton clay soil in Kisumu, where do you trace them? Nowhere. Cotton lint and seed marketing board is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Am I driving a point home?
You are, but
You're
I
driving a lot of points home at the
I want
same
to ask
time.
a question. After we blame the West, can we take a little time and blame ourselves as well?
This is why I'm telling you, the only way of you know, the West have a 5-letter thing. After doing all the calamities they have done in the world, they have a 5-letter word, that story, we will not, this was so bad. After saying
Actually,
sorry,
they never
then
actually even apologize. They don't say sorry. They don't say sorry. They don't take.
They say this was an unfortunate occurrence.
They move on.
For the longest, the Germans have been asked to apologize for the Herero people in Zimbabwe, and they've never apologized. They don't say sorry.
the Germans never did it in Zimbabwe. They never did it in Namibia. We know what they did in Namibia. We know what they did in Tanzania. We know what they have done around the world. And this has not caught up anything. But one thing that I want to tell you guys, that if we have to talk about this so well, I think bring on board once in a while, call people like me to come in that studio and then test this thing so that
You've got the platform over the phone. You've got the platform, and don't doubt it. We're not underplaying. We're not underplaying the importance of climate change. We're not underplaying the importance of climate change at all. What we're saying is we don't need to be on the negotiating table discussing climate change on this platform with the very perpetrators, and we're the victims. That is not how we should approach our role in climate change. It should be something internal, work on our pledges. We've talked about the different energy sources we can use, from geothermal, wind, and solar, and then the reforestation programs, and then maybe commit to lowering emissions or using cars that, only submit a certain amount of emissions. But in terms of going onto the global platform, it's a farce.
But once we've done that internally, which we have, then what?
You're a force to be reckoned with.
Then we continue with our development agenda.
Yes,
because
who look at China. Who reinvited China back onto the global scene for discussion and discourse?
Internally, we've already said we have all these resources.
We have
need to
said,
tap into the resources.
we have said,
we have had the
not
conversation.
Done. Let's not even
Then
have the
let's
conversation
actually
until we do it.
Let's
implement it. Let's implement it. And I can guarantee you, once it has been implemented, people take notice.
We don't
even need to say it and say that we have done.
We don't have
They
the
will bring
technology.
themselves
We
to
don't
the
have
table.
technology.
That's just how it happens.
We
You don't need to say I've done it. It will be clear.
We don't need to say anything on a
At
global
all,
platform
at
about
all.
global warming. We don't contribute. It's a drop in the ocean. And I know for sort of climate change proponents and I sound like I'm trivializing what we do, but we don't need to be there tying ourselves to pledges that will later come back to haunt us as ransom and so on for us to do something because we're dependent on the West and we made this pledge and so on. We don't need to be part of this conversation. It's a global conversation, so they say we don't need to be part of it. Our contribution is negligible. Internally, we need to look at Kenya and see what we can do for ourselves. So I say our contribution to the emissions, global emissions, is negligible, but the suffering, we as Africans as a whole, we experience or we bear the brunt of the West's emissions and their
And so I'm asking again. So once we've had the conversation internally and we've identified what we need
then
to do
we
and
keep
we know what we need
going
to do.
we only
So
go
what
to
do
summits
we
that
do
involve
next?
development
Implement
agendas.
them.
What do we do next?
We implement
Now,
them.
how do
get
we
to work.
implement it? We
get to
implement
work.
it by also investing in technology, right? And it takes time, and it takes a lot of time to invest
It
in this
doesn't
technology.
take
So
time.
it does take time. That's why we have not been able to do it.
No,
No,
we weren't able to do
that
it
is
because
not
we're
why we have
taking
not been able to do
responsibility.
it.
No, that's not the reason why we've
Can you
not been
bash
able
the government
to
a
do it.
little bit on this one, please?
Yeah, that's
That
why.
is
That's
is not why we
we've
haven't
been
been able to do it.
No,
It's
no.
not.
Why haven't
It's
you
not.
been
Okay,
able
how
to do
long
it?
does it take? Should we prescribe them a time?
How-
Give them a time limit? How long does it take? It doesn't. Development doesn't have a time factor to it. Development can happen in 20 years. It can happen in 10 years.
Can happen in a week.
Absolutely.
You can decide
China
to do
managed
something
to
today
lift
and it's done on
600
Friday.
million people out of poverty in 30 years. Unheard of. But that was under a dictatorship, which I was going to actually talk about. The importance of a dictatorship in development.
The importance of the Chinese model of dictatorship.
Now-
We have dictators in Africa and they've achieved the complete opposite.
No, benevolent dictatorship.
Do you know?
That encapsulates
Do you
it.
know when China actually started having that leapfrog? Is when they welcomed in the outsiders.
No, they were
No.
sorting
No.
internal
No.
problems.
They
Do you
sorted
know
internal
China's
problems.
history?
They sorted
They
out
They
the
were
sorted
internal
sorting out
problems.
their
And
Eric-
they took notice when they had done it.
Eric, you
on
have
this one.
unified us on this
On
one.
this
Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
They took notice after it had already been done. And needless to say, to a stage of completion. And that is when they took notice and said, okay, can we then come to the table? Because they saw a powerhouse in terms of what they were able to develop. And they said, we cannot be left out and there has to be inclusion because we cannot be left out in terms of what this country is going to be able to do on a global scale because of their internal development. And that cannot be ignored.
The West will partner where their benefits are
where
clear.
they will benefit.
I'm not talking
And
about
they saw
partnership.
that they could benefit because this country had actualized in terms of development. And they saw that we could benefit from this. And that is why they, I dare say, even asked to be part and to actually be welcomed at the table.
But Eric, even of interest, even when they said that they hadn't opened up to the West, that was entirely not true. There are a lot of people from the West who are doing business with China, even when it was supposed to be closed up.
When it was closed up,
yes, they were.
And then there was a
They
deliberate
were.
move by, I forget the name of that leader, who actually pushed for that.
Yes,
let's liberalize
yes,
our
yes,
markets.
yes,
let's
he
start.
did.
Let's start exporting to the world. Let's start producing what we have and selling it to the world. And they did that.
From a commercial point of view,
from a
but not
commercial point of
necessarily
view,
for
they
development
industrialized.
inclusion. They said, okay, yeah, we have surplus. Let's see if we can sell and get more money coming
remember
in.
that Chinese model was a collective leadership, huh? So by the time the individual who is now the chairman of the board, the chairman of the party, or the secretary general of the party speaks up, they are speaking up on behalf of what has been agreed. So this is our plan. So let's tell the world this is what we're doing. But that's never entirely what they're doing. But for now, let's give them this.
And let's
as we
release
proceed.
it in piecemeal.
Yes,
We can release
as it suits
in
us.
piecemeal as it suits us.
China had understood the game. And
They
the
played
West,
the
and
same
the West
game that
realized
the rest
these
of the
guys
Western
have
nations
understood it.
played. Absolutely. They played the same game and they had no choice but to play ball. And that's how it happened.
Yes, they took a position and they knew what their position was.
And this is what we're saying. It needs to be done here as well. We take a position and this is our position. Let me tell you, when you reach the point of development actualization for ourselves, they will have no point but to shut up and take notice.
Well, President Uhuru Kenyatta will be delivering his speech at the United Nations General Assembly this afternoon. It will be of interest to actually see what he says as regards climate change, because he's going to talk about climate change. I hope he doesn't make pledges, right? But I hope that he talks about what the country is thinking about itself, about its own development agenda. This is the conversation that we've had this morning. Thank you very much for joining us from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. The Situation Room. My name is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, Njeri Thorne, and C.T. Muga. From now until 3 o'clock, of course, just like every day, you'll have Sugar and Spice and everything nice, uninterrupted mix of music. And then, of course, from 3 to 7, you have Monique with the Spice Drive. And then from 7 o'clock, of course, to 9 o'clock, you're going to have the adults in the room. And the adults in the room are Emmanuel Kisiangani, Eric Omondi, and the Duchess of Ikolomani. And what's her name again, the Duchess of Ikolomani? Barbara Mbaka. Thank you very much for joining us. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. The Situation Room continues tomorrow. The conversation, of course, continues on our social media handles. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.